Let me feel your love again.
Yo, what is going on, Papa Fam? Welcome to a huge build, the Meta Messenger 2.0 with Next.js 13. Yes, my official first build ever with Next.js 13 because it just came out. So we got a lot of fun stuff to cover right now in this video. Let me know where you're watching from right now. If you're watching the replay, drop it in the comment down below. I'd love to see where everyone's watching from. But without further ado, you guys have been waiting for this. A Next.js 13 build with Upstash, Redis, TypeScript. Oh my God. Like, we just keep stacking things on. We just kept stacking it on. It's crazy. All right, guys. With that said, I can see everyone tuning in now. That's what I want to see. Welcome to the Next.js 13 Meta Messenger 2.0. Enjoy the video, please. Check this out, guys. Meta Messenger 2.0. Bam! Look at that. We have an incredible bit of tech today. So there is so much going on with this. Trust me, it may be confusing to understand what the hell is happening, but I will break it all down and you're going to learn so much in today's video. So I just want to go ahead and show you what's happening right now. So all of this is being powered by Upstash. And basically what we're doing is we're loading server components and we're doing a bunch of cool stuff. So let me go ahead and just type in. So this is amazing. That pushes to Upstash, which then goes to Pusher, and then you see the guy over here gets the response, right? So I'm pretending to be two different people right now because I didn't have two Facebook accounts. But you can see if you're having a chat, this is how it will look, right? Really, really clean. And we're using the new Next.js 13 components. So if I go ahead and refresh, oh, we have server components, which introduces loading. That's nice. And then we can go ahead and also log in to Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and sign myself out right now. And it's going to try and log me in. And as you can see, now I'm signed out. If I sign in, it's going to come to this page. If I click sign in with Facebook, at that point, it's going to go ahead and log me into Facebook. Now, I've already logged into Facebook on the website, so it's just thrown me straight in. But you can see we even have Sunny talks to another chat. That's jokes. We even have, there's a server rendering issue just because I'm not logged in on this side. I was trying to show you a little trick. The point is we have an absolutely jam-packed build today. There is so much to cover. I cannot wait. And if you are excited, all I ask is you smash and destroy that thumbs up button. Okay, so much stuff is happening today. Let me go ahead and read the chat right now. We got Norway, Bangladesh, UK, Seattle, India, Slovenia, New Hampshire, USA. What's up, Lewis Ryan? Romania, Slovakia, South Africa, San Diego. We've got India, Bangladesh. Oh, this is sick. South Africa, Kenya, Saudi Arabia. Oh man, international right now. All right, guys, without further ado, I'm going to dive into how we've gone ahead and built this out and what it's going to involve, because do not let this deceive you. This has a ton of tech underneath. This wouldn't have been possible without Upstash. Upstash is what we're using today to create a Redis database. So if you've been wanting to know about Redis, you don't know how to get it set up, you want to go ahead and get a kickstart in this area, this is the video for you, because Redis makes it incredibly easy to go ahead and do just that. Not only have they got a guide, so if we're using Next.js today, so you scroll down to the bottom, they've got a guide on how you can get set up. I'm going to show you anyway, but it's also an amazing platform for going ahead and getting set up with some serverless data. It works even if your app's not serverless, and it works with Next.js 13. My favorite part is they have a huge free tier, which is absolutely incredible. And they make setting up Redis so easy. That was my number one thing that I didn't like about Redis. It wasn't as easy as something like Firebase. I just wanted something which was quick, enabled, and it allowed me to have a serverless database in the form of a Redis database. Now, if you don't know what Redis is, it's an open source in-memory data store, and it's really, really fast. The problem is that they don't essentially allow you to kind of have the data persisting. Whereas Upstash came along, and now they allow us to go ahead and actually keep the data in a more robust fashion. So you have your database in seconds, it is super quick to set up, and they have global data sources. So this is going to go ahead, they're going to actually replicate your data to different regions. So it's available, it's quick to load, and it's safe. If any one place gets knocked out, your data is not gone, right? So it's robust, and it works off of all of our known favorite things like Vercel, like Lambdas. So it's going to work off of all of our serverless functions. That's why they have an incredible REST API. API, okay? So there's a bunch of things to know about Redis, about Upstash, which we're going to dive into today. But the one thing I do want to mention is that I always get the question of, Sonny, but do I need my card details to get started with this build? Well, no, that's because they have a per request pricing, which means your price is pretty much zero up until your first 10,000 requests, which is absolutely huge, right? You have so much like space to develop with it, and then you can go ahead and upgrade your plan. So absolutely massive amount of stuff, okay? So this is something that I really want to focus on today, and we're going to be pretty much setting up our first Upstash database, getting it working, and you're going to have your own database, and we're literally I'm going to show you how to add data to your Redis database, and then we're going to go ahead and make it real time by introducing a layer on top called Pusher. Pusher is going to allow us to have real-time messaging from each person. So in this case, as you saw, when I was typing in a message, it was popping up on the other user's screen. So in this case, if I show you a quick example, and I said, this is real-time. Right? It doesn't matter if there's 20,000 people on this right now. Yeah, it would say this is real time, and then that's pinged out to everyone. And eventually on this side, you're going to go ahead and get your message. As I'm live right now, it could be a little bit slow, but that's the only point, right? But if I had this running on like 15 browsers in front of me, every single person's going to get that message. So here we have a real time, wicked, scalable app, right? So I'm going to show you how we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to be diving into Next.js 13 today. So if you haven't used Next.js 13, then this is the video for you. I have done an incredibly in-depth video, which took me a long time. So please make sure you go check it out. If you want to know about the basics of Next.js 13, how to use the app component, all of that stuff, I have dropped a video. If you're watching a replay, Jay's going to add it around about here. So it's going to be circling around the screen somewhere. But it's basically explaining all the breakdown of the new features. But I'm never going to skip there. I'm going to show you today as well. So we're going to jump into the new app directory, the new server components, streaming, how we can have this beautiful loading state, right? And that's not the way that we traditionally did it. That's actually using React streaming and server components to achieve that, right? I'm going to use the new Next.js image. So we've got a lot of cool stuff to go ahead and dive into. But the one thing I want to mention is under the hood, Next.js 13 changes the way that we think, the way that we build stuff. We have to think in a slightly different way now. The whole layout, the page layout, everything is different, but it's really damn powerful. And I'm excited to show you how we're going to go ahead and crush that part of it today. So smash the thumbs up button. We're already over 200 likes. This is incredible, right? Let's dive into today's video. So first up, I want to mention, we are going to cover SWR as well. So if you haven't used SWR, this is an amazing way, which essentially can eliminate Redux. I said it, it's dangerously there, but it's a way to fetch data, cache it, and then efficiently update that information with mutates and so forth. So we're going to be using that today to get really efficient updates when we're actually pushing messages to our database. And we're also going to introduce something called optimistic updates, which if you've never used, I'm going to show you today. It's going to be a lot of fun, okay? And just worth mentioning, if you want to know any of this, or it's kind of going way over your head and you want to dive in, or you want me to go ahead and explain this more in depth, I've already done like 3 coaching calls on all of this stuff inside of our course, the 0 to Full Stack Hero, and we're running an event right now. So head over to papareact.com/course. Join us over there if you want to carry on and kind of, you can't be asked to wait for my next video, okay? So let's go ahead and dive into today's video, okay? So first up, I want to go ahead and start my app. So I want you to go ahead, and I've actually made this for reference. So as I'm going to be shutting down my local host, we've got some nice screenshots here. And the reason why I've done this as well is because I want to take you on an approach where, imagine we had a freelancing gig, right? In this case, we've got some screenshots. The client's like, yeah, I want you to build this, right? I want you to build this entire thing out. I'm going to show you how we can go ahead and actually do it just from screenshots with the Next.js flow. Okay, so a lot of people want that direct explanation. I'm going to give you exactly what you want today. Okay, so let's go ahead and start things off by kicking open our terminal. Now on my terminal, I like to put things inside of my documents builds directory. So I'm going to go into my documents, into my builds directory, and I'm just going to put everything there. Okay, and the first thing I want you to do is head over to Next.js 13. Right now, I'm going to be using I'm not going to be upgrading a current directory. I'm actually going to be using the Next.js 13 with Tailwind setup, right? So the reason why I like to show you this every time is not because I forgot, right? So you could be thinking, is it because he forgot, right? But in this case, it's just because I want to show you, like, honest to God, a straightforward like approach as to how I would do it if I was to start from the absolute get-go, right? So in this case, it's not actually here. You can do it this way, but this way I'm not a fan of. I prefer using the one which was create next app. So it's create next app with TypeScript and Tailwind. So it's actually going to be this one right here. So I think it'll be, yeah, there it is. Yep. So it's going to be this one. So there is a really nice extension template that you can use. This one here, npx create next app -e with Tailwind CSS my project. And the reason why I show you that is I'm not trying to be the best coder in the planet. I want to show you that I am a human being, and this is honestly how I go ahead and find my templates when I'm starting things off. So just trying to show you so you guys can do the exact same thing when you're on your own. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and pop that in, and instead of my project, I'm going to name this something like, I'm going to say Upstash Meta Messenger. Okay, hit enter, and it sometimes prompts you if you want to install the package. So in this case, let's go ahead and hit Y. So just enter is good for me, and this is going to go ahead and set up our Next.js 13 app. So it is going to initialize with Next.js 13, and then it's going to go ahead and give us a nice starter template. Okay, so this is going to be a nice way to set up in a really quick manner, and I'm going to show you how we can then go ahead and change the base of our app to go from the traditional Next.js 12 approach to the more modern Next.js 13 approach. Okay, so there's lots of changes now. We've got a new app directory, which is a lot of fun. I'm going to dive into that as well. So cd upstash, let's go ahead and say cd upstash. I've got lots of builds here. You can see cd upstash, and I'm going to go ahead and say Upstash Meta Messenger, and then I'm going to do code dot to open up my code. Okay, so that's nice. Let's go ahead and close out our old terminal, and then let's use this as so. So I'm going to go ahead and make my workspace nice and organized, so we've got a nice way to reference our build as we build it out. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually cut my build that was running right here. So I'm going to terminate that build, and we're going to start from absolute scratch. Okay, so first things first, if we go into our app pages directory, you can see this is using the traditional Next.js 12 approach. Okay, so I want to take our time today, and I want to get feedback from you guys to know, am I going at a good pace? Is it going like in a way that you expect or want? And just give me feedback, and I can go ahead and adapt and change it as we need to. Okay, so first things first, Command J, it opens up our terminal, and I'm going to go ahead and use yarn because we've got a yarn lock file. If I've got package lock, then it's going to go ahead and I'm going to use npm, but you can switch. Really doesn't mean you're locked in, right? So I'm going to use yarn run dev. Now, something I want to mention is when we go ahead and do this, it's going to spin up on localhost 3000. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my localhost 3000 right now. So localhost 3000, let's go ahead and pop this over here. So we've got a nice little preview of our app next to us as we go ahead and build this out. Okay, there we go. So I've got my terminal up right now, Command J to hide my terminal, right? So fresh, clean start. You can see this is using the Next.js 12 approach, right? So this is by default in Next.js 12. If it's inside the pages folder, it's going to be a client component. So that's an important thing to mention, a client component. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and introduce the new app directory, which is the Next.js 13 way, and we're going to make our homepage by default be a server component, which means it's loaded on the server, then it's thrown onto the page, which takes a lot of the JavaScript away from the client onto the server, which means that there's less JavaScript to be delivered to the client, which gives you a ton of bonuses, right? So in order to do that, we need to go into our next config. And the first thing I want to do, and a lot of people are asking, is this going to be up on the screen afterwards? Yes, it will be up on the stream, up on YouTube afterwards, so you can watch it afterwards. Yeah, I made it a little bit bigger as well. So in this case, we're going to go experimental, and we're going to enable our app directory. So I want to mention before we get started, or before we move any further forward, this is in beta still, which means that most likely at some point there's going to be some detail if you watch this back in the future that would have changed. That is okay. That is tech. It's not to have a go at me or Vercel or anyone else. Tech adapts, tech evolves. That means that from these tutorials, take away those golden nuggets of information and don't always rely on the exact thing, okay? So what I want to mention here is that if there is a change, don't freak out. Look at the documentation, so the Next.js 13 documentation, and actually go ahead and solve that problem yourself if you get stuck in it, okay? So don't always rely on tutorials exactly down to the grain. Really, really important. Next.js 13 is still using beta features, right? So it's not in beta Next.js 13, but it's using beta features, okay? So we got app directory true. I don't know actually if the whole thing's in beta, but anyway, yeah, you can see Next.js 13, and the actual blog page for this is a beta. So you'll go to the Next.js 13 upgrade page, and here you get a nice little doc, and you'll know that you're in the right place because it'll be dark theme. Here you go, beta.nextjs, right? So as soon as you get this dark theme, you know you're in the right place. Okay, so now we've got the app directory enabled. Let's go ahead and create our new folder structure. So we're going to create an app folder. Now inside of our app folder, I'm just going to create a new page.tsx. Now, as you can see, we now have a new page layout. So the new pages follow this new layout where there's a higher level page, which represents our index. And then every single folder represents our root. So if I have a folder called search, inside of that, I'll have page.tsx, and that will resemble the page for /search. You can have loads of dynamic fields, all that stuff. I have that video before. Go check it out if you want. I'm going to link it in the comment as well. Okay. So I'm going to use our snippet from our handy library over here. So ES7. Let's go ahead and go check out our ES7 snippets. So you want to make sure you've got these snippets enabled. These are really handy, and this is what I'm going to be using. Okay. So let's go ahead and do RFCE, and let's type in homepage. Okay, now you can see nothing's happened. That's fine as of yet, and I will show you why. So let's firstly go down to Tailwind config, make sure that we have app here as well. Okay, so by default now they introduced the app directory as well, so that's a good sign. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and actually get this kind of set up and running. So in order to get this kind of kick-started, firstly we've got to delete our index.tsx, our old one. So that's gone, and now we'll get 404. And then we need to restart our server because we've enabled a new experimental feature. Okay, so I'm going to kickstart our server. So I'm going to cancel it all, yarn run dev. And now you'll see we get loads of stuff just happen on the screen, right? So we detected TypeScript in your project, bam. So I clicked allow, and then we go down here and you'll see your page.tsx did not have a root layout. So we created a loop root layout for you. So the root layout is a really important part of Next.js 13. It's how we can actually enable the different layouts, and we can have these different parts of our layout which aren't going to get re-rendered unnecessarily, right? So it introduces this new modular approach of re-rendering the page. Okay, so at this point now, what I want to do is look at our folders, and we can see we've got this layout. And as I'm going to give you just a quick breakdown of what's going on. I'm not going to go so far into it because there's lots of Next.js 13 videos out there. But for this layout, you can see here now we've got the HTML, the head, so you can add the title and stuff in there if you want. And then we've got this body. Now there are loads of reserved files. There's the layout, the head, the page, but in this case, the head, right? You can see is actually going to go ahead, and this is a reserved file name, and this is for when we want to go ahead and actually pop in different attributes inside of our head element. Okay, so in this case here I can say, rather than localhost 3000, I want to say meta messenger. Okay, hit save, and now if I refresh my page, we get meta messenger. So you see how this nice little page structure, and this is available at every single root. So if we had a /search, you can have all of these reserved files right over there. There's also loading, there's also error, there's also template, I think it is called as well. So there's a bunch of different ones, right? And they're all over here listed down below. Okay, again, if you want to know more about this, I've done a whole coaching call inside of Zero to Full Stack Hero, right? So we have this down. Now at this point, the children is just going to be the page. So anything that's in the page basically gets pushed out here. So what's really cool here is you can have a header component and a bunch of other stuff, and it'll get shown there. Now you're probably wondering, that's not Tailwind CSS. So inside of our header now, this is where we would have to go ahead and pop in our Tailwind. So as you can see, previously we resorted to this file, the _app.tsx. Well, we can actually get rid of that, but I want to pay attention to this top line where we import the styles from our global CSS. This is where we pull in our Tailwind. Okay, so at this point I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to go ahead and first I want to change the music because this is distracting as hell. Okay, that's bad, it's calmer. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and copy that, take it over here and paste, right? We don't actually need the _app.tsx file anymore either. Bam, it's gone. Okay, hit save. Now notice something that you need to understand is that the API is still located inside of pages, right? So pages /API, then we still have our API endpoints there until the guys over at Vercel figure out a way to go ahead and push in the new structure. Okay, they probably have a way already. So now you can see I've got my Tailwind CSS, and we can test that by simply going to page.tsx, class name, text, for XL, bam. And I should have bigger text. There we go, nice. Okay, so now by default, this is a server component, which means if I have anything like state or a click handler or any other sort of interactive element, it won't work because by default, anything in the app directory is a server component first. And then if we want to change something, it's recommended that you take that portion, which is interactive, and you just make a client component for the minimal amount that you need to. Because remember, we're trying to minimize the amount of JavaScript that's executed on the client, okay? So really great stuff. We're already over 200 viewers and the likes are just flying. Thank you so much, guys. Absolutely incredible. Okay, so at this point, let's go ahead and template things out. So first things first, I want to build the header. Okay, I want to have some kind of header, and this header you can see is going to adapt. It's going to have welcome to Meta Messenger if we are not signed in, and if we are signed in, it's going to have my Facebook information, and it's going to have the Meta logo on the right as well. Thank you, Mufakir, sorry, for the 100 donation. Appreciate you, bro. All right, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and do the following. So from our homepage, I'm now going to go ahead and introduce for now the homepage. I'm just going to write H1 hello world. Right. So this is going to be our Meta Messenger. Let's just say welcome to the Messenger. Okay, so I'm going to scream that in front of us. Right. Then what I want to do is I want to go into my layout. And what's cool here is I'm going to go ahead and introduce a header component. Okay. Now this header component doesn't exist yet. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make this its own component, header.tsx. Now, as you can see previously in Next.js 12, if I was to do that, it would actually go ahead and cause the a root to be formed at header, right, /header. But now in this case, because we have our reserved file names like page.tsx, it just looks at the folder root that you're in. So we have this new root segment leaf structure. Okay, so that's what they're following. Okay, so RFCE, and I'm going to say header, and in this case, let's just make it. Oh, okay, I've got rid of my. Okay, there we go. Scared me. Let's go ahead and pop in the correct syntax. There we go. Semantics matter, right? And then I'm going to mess up down the line. Watch, someone's going to call me out on that. All right, so at this point, we've got the header, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop in our left side, which is going to be this bit right here. And then our right side, which is going to be our bit over here, okay? But firstly, it's probably easier to do this one because we're not logged in. So let's go ahead and have a logged out state first, okay? So this one is going to be fairly straightforward. We're going to have a div with some stuff inside of it. So inside of our div, we're going to have another div, which is going to include these two components next to each other, right? So let's do that right now. So inside there, we're going to have our image component. So we've got our, our image component. So firstly, a div. Then we've got our image component, and notice how this is going to be from next image, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and import that like so. The source for that is actually going to be a link that I've saved you a bit of time. I've shortened it to one of our links. So let's go ahead and pop that in right now. And then you can see it's complaining. Now TypeScript doesn't want us to not include, it has to include the correct properties. Now in Next.js 13, we have to have an oat property, okay? So in this case, I'm just going to call this the logo. Cool. Okay, now after that, we have to give it a height and width, and then we also have to whitelist it. So that way we don't allow some misuse of this optimization for the images, okay? So in this case, I'm going to give it a height of 10, and I'm going to give it a width of 50, right? So width of 50, hit save, and you can see we still don't see anything. That's because we haven't even pulled it in, right? So in this case, if I go ahead and pop in the header, we're probably going to get an error now saying, whoa, you need to whitelist it. There we go. All right, so now we grab our host name. In this case, make sure you trust that link, okay? So I'm gonna go into my nextconfig.js, and I'm gonna go into my object here, and I'm simply gonna type in images dot, and I'm gonna, images, and then this is gonna have a domains array inside of it. Now, instead of this, I'm going to pop in links.popreact.com. This is because on the server, it's going to do some optimizations to make sure that image is rendered at several different sizes, and it only delivers the one that we actually need for the screen size, and it converts it to WebP. A bunch of cool stuff actually happens on the Vercel server, okay? So that's good. Let's go ahead and do that and close, and then we're going to make sure that we actually go ahead and save ourselves the hassle because we changed nextconfig. We have to restart our server. Quick little water break. Right, and this is amazing. I see so many people tuning in. Oh wow, yeah, we hit 100. Oh man, we hit 180,000 subscribers. That is crazy. Thank you, Papa Fam. Absolutely amazing. Smash that like button for that one fact alone. Okay, so at that point, if we hit refresh, this will now be whitelisted. So we should see hydration failed. Okay, that's okay for now. It's because I actually had something else loading. So in this case, what I want to do is open up my inspector, disable my cache, and I want to load it fresh. Okay, so in this point, I've got a few things happening here. Let's have a look. This is because I had so much stuff running before. Okay. So whenever I get this issue, I had this happen to me before. I'm going to make sure I clear my cache and do a hard refresh. Empty the cache, reload. There we go. Okay. That should have fixed it. Okay. Damn it. I ran into this problem before and it caused me a little bit of a headache. It was a temporary problem as well. So let's go ahead and do yarn run dev as well again. I got stuck in this loop last time. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a fresh window. So localhost 3000. Let's pop this over here. Okay. All right. It's debugging already. That's fine. We've got a hydration error. Let's go ahead and check this out. So at this point, now my header, I believe, is actually going to be, if I was to get rid of my header, I want to see something quickly. Let's go ahead and refresh. So it's not my, so it's my header that's causing my issue here, strangely. Okay, so let's go into my layout. And I just want to double check something. So at this point, I mean, I could make my header just a client component. Okay, so for this purpose, I'm going to make it a client component, okay? I don't want to make it a client component. That's the problem. We've got my header. Inside of my header, we've got the, there we go. Okay. Interesting. Let me check if it's my image tag. So it's not that, it's actually everything here. So let's do a little bit of debugging. Let's jump into it. Let's see. Header cannot appear as a child. Oh, okay. Oops. Oops. Oh, damn it. I see. Okay. That was not an error on just randomly happening. This was because we had our HTML. It has to be inside the body. My bad. My bad. Right. That's actually, yeah. Lewis Ryan caught me out. That's actually a good thing, right? So there we go. First bit of debugging. Hey, there we go. Nice, right? So do not quit, because that was stressing me out a little bit. But trust me when I say, this has been happening for hours for the last few days, because it's new tech, right? New Next.js 13 is new. There's things that we slip up on. That is one of them, right? So it has to be inside the body, right? So make sure you don't do that same mistake, okay? So now the header's there. And then we're going to go ahead and have our p tag next to it. So firstly, kudos to that. We got past it, like the bloody video for that, right? The stressful moments. And we're going to say, welcome to Meta Messenger. There we go. Bam. Right. And then we're going to do a p tag, class name. And that's actually how I debug it, right? So you saw, like, I literally just, I'll check the console, look back, look this and see. And then eventually I should have just checked the consoles. That's the truth. All right, so text blue 400, there we go, bam. And then I want to make this sort of next to each other. So class name, and we're going to make this a flex, right? And we're going to space the components a value of 2, right? And I do want to center it. There we go. So that should make it a little bit nicer. For the div outside of it, I'm going to make this a flex column. And I'm going to do a flex firstly, because you can't use flex without flex column. You can't use flex column without flex column. You know what I mean? My item center, then we're going to make space y of 5, because the child is not only this div, we're going to have another thing underneath it. And this is going to be a link, which is going to be imported from Next.js. We don't actually need this React, right? So you don't actually need that anymore. It just comes in that little template that I do. And here I'm going to have href, and this href is going to go ahead and point towards our sign-in. Now our sign-in is going to use NextAuth, and NextAuth points everything that we're going to set it to point things towards auth / sign-in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. So /auth / sign-in. Okay, and there we go. And that's not nice. We're going to actually make sure we have a closing link, and we're going to sign in. Now, a quick little addition for Next.js 13. Previously, you had to have in Next.js 12 a tag inside of your link tags. Since Next.js 13, what they're trying to do, even with the image component, is remove all this unnecessary wrappers, right? So now it's directly an a tag itself. And same with the image component. It's directly an image component. You don't have to mess around with these wrappers. So good job Next.js team, right? Vercel, you guys are sick. Lee, all of them are pretty incredible, right? So they're doing good work over there. So we got the Meta Messenger looking pretty nice, and then underneath all of that, I think that's pretty good for now. Right, we've got welcome to Meta Messenger. The sign in looks terrible though. Okay, so we don't have a sign in. Yeah. So let's customize this with a little bit of styling. I'm going to save us a bit of time. I've got a little bit of styling here that I'm just going to pop in. So as you can see, I've got a background blue. When I hover, I want to go a little bit darker. Text should be white, font bold, padding on the y-axis of 2, x of 4, and make it rounded. Okay. So let's do that. Hit save. And just like that, wow, look at that. Hover effects. Nice. Okay. So at that point, the header, let's go ahead and make this stick to the top. So if you noticed, when I was scrolling, this part was sticking to the top of the page, right? So you can see that this area was kind of sticking. So as I was even scrolling down, that was actually sticking to the top. Now, the way we do that is we go ahead and I kind of like this screenshot approach. It's kind of cool, right? Gamer Destroyer says, pop fam, that's what I'm talking about. We're going to do sticky top 0. Okay, I'm going to set the music up. I need to get a bit more energized. All right, top 0. We're going to say Z50. Right, this is amazing, guys. 250 people across platform, sick. Z50. I'm gonna say background should be white, just to prove to you that that's actually working. Background 500, and you can see that we actually have a background, right? So we need to make it white, and we need to make it Z50 to make sure it goes over the elements as it scrolls on top of it. Okay, so looks good. And then we're gonna say it's a flexbox. Justify the center, and we're gonna say items should be central. That means I'm going to center on the X and Y axes, give it a padding of 10, and I want to give it a shadow very slightly, very, very slight shadow. So you see that? That's actually a super subtle shadow, right? But there you go. We've got the top looking pretty decent right now, okay? So just like that, we kind of have this nice little trick that makes us allow it. When I click that, it will take me to auth sign in, which we'll set up in a bit, okay? I am going to go ahead and also make the other part, right? So why not? Let's just go ahead and do this right now. Now I don't have a picture right now, but I can go ahead and build the template of it, and then we can have our conditional change based on once we've implemented a session. So eventually I will have a session here, right? And that session will be a value that we pull from our NextAuth session, right? So in that case, for now, I'm just going to say we do have a session, right? And if we have a session, then I want to return the following. Right, instead, I'm going to say return this instead, right? So it will only hit this if there's no session. So if the user's logged out, right? That's what I mean by session. Now at this point, I'm going to have a header, right? And it's pretty much the exact same header, right? So in this case, GitHub Copilot's getting a bit carried away. Let's go ahead and copy the header. Let's just take this out. So we've got the exact same header. And then inside of the body, I'm going to go ahead and have a div. And this div is actually the same as the other one. So it's going to be a class with a flex, a space on the x-axis of 2. And here I'm going to have an image tag. Okay, so we've got a self-closed image tag and the following attributes. So this will actually be the user's image, right? So eventually we're going to point to that by using session.user.image, but right now we don't have that. Okay, so at this point I can just grab a image off of the internet. So in this case, okay, let me grab a picture. I could probably use my other one. I'm trying to think. Okay, for now, let's just use this one. Okay, so I'm going to use a meta image just as a placeholder, because that way we don't have to do anything else to it, right? Easy days. I'm lazy, okay? Don't hate me. I'm lazy for that, right? And then what we're going to do is make it a rounded circle with an object contain margin x of 2, okay? And underneath it, I'm going to have a div, and I'm going to have 2 p tags, right? So p times by 2, nice little Emmet trick. If you didn't know, now you know. And then we're going to say logged in as, and then we're going to have the name. So in this case, I'll just be Sunny Sanga or whatever your Facebook name is, because we are going to be implementing Facebook login, yeah? So meta login in this video. Let's go ahead and hit save. So logged in as Sunny Sanga. So in that case, it looks pretty nice. Oh, this is cool, man. Ustate says, oh, his name's Ustate. He goes, guys, if you're a new developer, 5 months ago, I didn't know anything about React. With the help of YouTube videos like this, I found a job 2 months ago. Don't only watch videos, code along with it. Yes, please code along with it. And if you get stuck, don't just quit. It took me hours to build this. Like not even hours, it took me a few days to build this out. Trust me, you get stuck and it feels like you want to explode. But that's why I'm here to just be real about it, right? We're in this together. That's why we have the community, the Bubble community. Make sure you join it if you want to be a part of something where you don't feel alone when those moments slap you, because they do, right? Let me know in the comments right now if you know what I'm talking about. Right, so p class name, and then we're going to text blue 400. And then for this p tag, I'm going to go ahead and say font mode and text should be large. Okay, so hit save and bam. Look at that. Oh, it just popped in. So sick, right? And then underneath that, we're going to have a logout button. Now, the reason why I'm going to have a logout button component here is because this is a server component. And when I click that button, it's going to have an interactive element. So when you have any interactive element, it has to be a client component. So like our click handler or a piece of state. In this case, we have a little bit of click handling when we click on this. That's actually a logout button. Believe it or not, I know, I'm lazy, right? So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and make that logout button. So logout button, and I'm not gonna go too far into folder structures today. We're just gonna keep it simple. So I'm gonna create a logout button like so, logout button.tsx, RFCE, bam, we've got a logout button. Okay, now at this point, what I'm actually gonna do is probably this, maybe use the sign in button rather than that, right? Because it might look nicer than what we have there. So I'm gonna take my sign in button that we have here, and I'm just gonna pop that in over there in a second, right? So where we have that now, I'm just going to go ahead and do, so I've got it's not a link tag that I want to use. I'm actually just going to have a button, okay? And this is not going to have this. It's just going to be a simple button that says sign out. There we go, all right? And then this button is going to be, yeah, so let's go ahead and import it like so. And if you're wondering how the hell I do that, click at the end, control spacebar, and then you can get the auto complete like I just did, right? Nice. Now we've got the sign out. Okay, pretty slick. So as you can see now, they're kind of stuck together. I don't like that, right? I don't want it to be stuck together like that. So in order to change the look of that, the way we do it is we change it from justify center to justify between. And that means it's going to allocate some space between them accordingly. So if we're on a huge screen, it allocates accordingly, just like that. Now I've got a sign out button. When I click it, what should we want to do, right? I need a click handler. The minute I have a click handler, you're going to see the following error. So if I had something like this, just a quick little example, console.log hello. Now you're going to see, whoa, error. Wait for it. Oh, error. Something kicked off. Ouch. Right, look at that. See, I told you it's going to happen because we have event handlers cannot be passed to client component props, right? So natural thing that's going to happen when you're using Next.js 13. So the way we get rid of this is we use the directive use client at the top, okay? If I do that, it tells Next.js that that is a client component, which means it sends that bit of JavaScript to the client to render out, okay? So at this point now, we can have an on-click handler. So all I need to do from there is eventually have this sign out. So we're going to come back to that once I implement NextAuth. Okay. So at this point, damn good, right? So we've got the session in. If I was to toggle our session from true to false, you can see it's going to go ahead and change. So once we connect our signing component, that will look pretty damn nice. Okay. Moving on to this middle portion. So I'm just going to create a template here, just something like, it's just going to have a bit of information in there before, and then we're going to connect up Redis. But I'm going to quickly breeze over the middle bit, the message list, and then we're going to build this input component so we can start pushing messages to Upstash, and then we can go ahead and start pulling them in. Okay, so let's do that right now. So first up, let's go to our middle. So let's head over to our page. Now this is a top level, which means we are at the index page. Okay, so at the index page, it's going to be very simple. We're going to have a main. So it's going to be very like, and then what I like about this is that you separate your presentational logic. Look, we have our main layout, then we have the children, which is rendered inside a page. And you see how it's simple. It looks clean, right? So at this point, we're going to have a chat input. I can put it both ways. It really don't matter. I'm going to have a message list, right? So these are two components right now. Oh, we're getting into a nice flow state right now, right? So looking pretty sick. We've got message list, chat input, and we're going to go ahead and start building out. Firstly, let's build the message list component. Okay, so first up, we're going to go ahead and pop in a message list, right? And we're going to do the following. I'm going to create this component like so. So up in here, we're going to create message list.tsx, RFCE, and that's going to be our message list. So here, so just say messages go here. Bam, save. Okay. Now with this bit, we're going to go ahead and import it. Bam, hit save. And as you can see, we have our message list component. Nice. Next up, we're going to do our chat input. Okay. So that's just the template for that, by the way, right? I'm going to actually put some important stuff in there. Okay, so let's imagine we had a message list, and then inside of there we just had a bunch of p tags saying message blah blah blah, and these are eventually going to be actual messages, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and pop these in. There we go, nice little template. Now for chat input, we're going to go ahead and do the following. We're going to go ahead and say chat input like so, and this is going to be something which is going to be fixed to the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So Command B, pop it in, make a new file called chatinput.tsx, and just like that, RFCE chat input. Okay, so this is where we're going to have the user input. So all of the kind of stuff where, you know, this bit down here, basically, let's go over here. So down here, this beautiful little send it area, right? And you can see it's actually we go ahead and disable it if it's not logged in for the user. Okay, so let's head and do that right now. So for the chat input, it's simply going to be a form. Okay, so that entire thing that you see at the bottom is a form, and then I type in, I hit enter, it hits the send. Right, so that means it's very simple. We only have an input and a button. Done. Input and a button. Done. Right, now here we're going to have a type of the button is going to be submit. It's going to be a submittable button. Here we're going to go ahead and say send. Right, for the styling of the button, let's keep it pretty fresh. We've got that same bit of styling for that we had over at the other button. So pretty similar, and you can, you know, refactor that into a custom class if you want. But in this case, background blue, when we hover, it goes slightly darker. Same bit of styling from before, but when it's disabled, the opacity goes to 50%, and it's going to have a cursor saying you're not allowed to do that on that bit. Okay, so this thing, oh, we're about to break 300 likes. Let's go, guys. This is sick, right? So at this point now, we are doing pretty well. So let's go ahead and see. Oops, I've changed up my screen a little bit. There we go. Let me just move it around. Nice. Okay. So we got this here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop this on the side. Okay. There we go. Someone just said 300 likes in. Hey, damn, just missed the 300. Nice. Right. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and create we're actually going to bring in the input form so we can see it, right? So I'm going to import it here like so. And again, you don't need the React anymore. That's old. You don't actually need to say that it's React, right? Now that's actually an input film right there. So I'm going to go ahead and pop something in so we can see it hot reload into shape. Here I'm going to style things out, and I'd like to put it after there because we're going to have a bit of bulky news here. So in this case, for the class name, I want to go ahead and pop in the following, right? So we're going to say, firstly, it's going to be flex1. But before I do that, I'm going to give it a placeholder. This placeholder is going to say enter a message, right? So enter a message here, ... Someone said, is this really live? Yep, it is, Fan. I am live, right? And you're probably wondering, how the hell did he read that? It's practice, right? So flex1 rounded. So now, if I do that, you can see it's there. Now, the only reason why it's not using up the entire space is the container is not flex. Right, so in this case, if I do that, bam, it uses up the entire thing. Okay, so flex1 rounded. Let's make it a little bit more interesting than that. Let's make it have a border. Let's give the border some styling, and then I want to do some focus sort of effects on here, right? So I'm going to pop in a bunch of information, and we're going to do the following. So I'm going to pop in border gray 30, 300, but you might not know this one: focus outline, focus ring 2, and focus ring blue. That's pretty cool, right? And what this does is, you see, when I focus on that element, right, it turns blue. But if I made it red, it will do the exact same thing but for red. So a really nice kind of element right there. And we're going to make the focus, the border will be transparent when we're focused, as we've got a ring around it instead, and then the padding X, padding Y, and so forth. Okay, so overall, generally pretty nice, right? So this is kind of cool. Somebody says, Festus says, good work, Sonny. You've always been my role model. I appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. You guys are awesome. That's why I do what I do, right? So keep smashing that thumbs up button. I'll keep the videos coming. Okay, so we got some beats happening. So we're going to do, on the form, I'm going to say it's a flex box, padding X of 10, padding Y of 5, because I hate the spacing right now. Space out the send and the input by 2. And then we're going to say border on the top. Border should be gray 100, sorry. Now at the beginning, this is where I make it basically a fixed component, right? So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say it's fixed to the bottom of the screen at the exact bottom. And it's going to have a Z index of 50, which means that as we scroll over things, it's not going to basically, it's going to use up the majority of the space, right? So in this case, as soon as I do fixed, you have to say it's width of 4 in order to make sure that you actually have the rest of that space. So that's pretty nice. I like that, right? It's kind of cool. Nice. And now we want to go ahead and keep track of what I'm typing in, right? So I always get the question, is it going to be live afterwards? Yes, it will be live afterwards. All my live streams go straight up back on the channel afterwards, right? So at this point, I need to map my input to the input field right here. And there's so many ways you can do it. There's ref, there's map, there's a form submit. But in this case, I want to actually style based on my input. So I want to have a piece of state. So because I have a piece of state, it means it's going to be a client component. So in this case, I'm going to use client to indicate that the chat input is a client component. I'm now going to have access to my state. If I didn't do that, I'm not going to have access to my state, right? So set input, and then I'm going to go ahead and say use state. Now at this point, I can pull in my use state from React, and I can go ahead and connect up my input field. So for the input field, the way you connect it is you say the value is assigned to our piece of state. On change, so as the user types in, every single time they type in, E is an event gets fired off. And what you do is you update the input, so in our state, with e.target.value, which resembles the input value, so the value that is in here. So every time it changes, whatever is in here gets pushed into state. Okay, so pretty sick, looking pretty nice so far. I've actually gone ahead and opened up something I shouldn't have opened up. There we go, clutch. So at that point, and now I can go ahead and say, if there is no input, then we are disabling, right? So disabled will be true if there's no input. So let's see what happened there. So my button should have been disabled if there was no input, and it wasn't, and that's weird. So let's go ahead and put my disabled opacity 50. Let's refresh. Okay, so sometimes the hot reloading a little bit janky, right, when it's on server components, but it's okay. We forgive them, right? So in this case, you see that? Nice. Right, and the same thing I'm going to do here. I'm going to disable entry if no, I'm not going to disable entry. I'm going to disable that if you actually don't have a session afterwards. Okay. So at that point, it looks kind of cool, right? So let's neaten this up a little bit. Very nice, right? So quick little water break. Absolutely incredible amount of viewers today. You guys are absolutely awesome for tuning in. Almost at, can we get to 400 likes? I think we can. I think we'll break 1,000 today. Right. So we got the button down. So this is looking kind of cool. So when I hit hello and I hit submit, you see how it refreshes the form, right? So obviously we want to connect that to a form handler. So let's do that right now. Let's say on submit, and we're going to go ahead and say add message. So this is going to be a function that's going to be assigned over here. So we're going to say const add message equals a function, and anything that is a form is going to have an event attached to it. So there's a little trick, okay? To get the type definition for your event in TypeScript, what you do is you pop an arrow here and you simply inspect your E. And here you can see form event HTML form element. So if I grab that, go over here, paste it in, and I import that, just like that, I have a perfect type definition. I can get rid of that, have the signature down. And now I get my type definitions, prevent default. See, little tricks, just make life easy, right? Little tricks make it so much easier. Abria says, mother of God, you're awesome. You're awesome for tuning in. Thank you. Daniel says, my boy, what's up? Someone goes, I'm watching from my college gym. That's what I'm talking about. It's omnipresence. All right, so at that point, we now have the ability to tap into when we actually have the user submit the form. So by doing e.prevent default, when I type in hit enter or I press send, nothing refreshes. So we're preventing the default behavior. I also want to do some defensive programming. I want to say if there's no input, return, cut things off at that point, right? Now what I am going to do is I'm going to copy into a different variable. So I'm going to say message to send equals my input. Now the reason I do this is because I want to make it optimistic. So that means when as soon as you hit send, I can clear this. Right. So as soon as you hit send, what I can do is I can say set input to empty, and then I still have access to my variable inside a message to send. Right. So as soon as I hit enter, bam, you see how it's like optimistic. It's bam, it's straight away, it's quick. Right. And that means I still have access to the variable right here. So I have a copy of it. Okay. So Alex says, I like that part when you say it's practice, man. It is different. I know, dude. It is. It's just practice. That's all it is. Right. So at this point, we have our message looking pretty good. So I think what we can do now, is fair to say, is we can actually go ahead and set up our Upstash connection, okay? So for Upstash, what we are going to do is firstly head over to upstash.com. So I want to go ahead and give a quick introduction to Upstash. So as I mentioned earlier, they're an incredible platform for setting up our Redis database, right? And again, it allows us to have a nice little REST API to make connections to. Now, if you don't know already, we shouldn't really be using things like connections directly, like a socket connection to something like a serverless function, because they should be stateless. They shouldn't have connections. They should be able to scale up, down, shouldn't be like connected to anything for that long. So REST API is an ideal situation for things like Lambdas, for things like Vercel functions and so forth. Thank you, Jobin Rose, for the donation. I appreciate you, bro. Right, let's go check this out. So at this point, we're now going to go ahead into our console. Now, if you do want to check it out even further and you just want to play around for yourself, make sure you go down here, check out their docs, but I'm going to jump straight into the console. Now, for today, I've already set up a demo build. So all you would need to do when you come to the console is actually go ahead and create a database. You get a free one project when you set up. So in this case, I've already created a demo build. So I'm going to go into our demo build right here. So I've clicked into the demo build and you can see we've got a bunch of information right here. They make it so easy, guys. You can even inspect your data browser. So in this case, I can see what is actually available inside of the data browser. So let's go ahead and check this out. Thank you so much. Sasitharan just dropped $7.99 Australian dollars. I think he's the best React tutorials, mate. Thank you. I appreciate you, bro. That's actually sick. Thank you, man. So in this case, look, the way you store data inside of your Redis database. Remember, Upstash is just holding a Redis database basically and allowing us an awesome connection to it. So in this case, you can store loads of different data types in here, right? So the data structure server is mainly kind of storing things like key value pairs, hashes, lists, sets, sorted sets, streams, and a few others, right? What we're going to focus on in this case, this is a key value pair, for example, a string. But we're going to use something called a hash, right? Or so in this case, the hashes is going to essentially be a list. So in this case, a messages hash. And what we're going to have inside is a key to resemble the first value. And this key should be unique, right? And then we're going to have the content inside. And this will include the message, all the different information about the user and so forth, right? So about the message and so forth. So if I was to copy that and pop it here, you can see we've got the username, we've got the created at, we've got the email, the profile pic, and so forth. Okay, so a bunch of information there that we can go ahead and jump from. So once we have that down, now what we're going to essentially do is we're going to go ahead and you don't actually need this test data already, by the way. I can delete this, whatever, but I'm going to keep it here because we can connect to it, have a look at it. It makes life a lot easier. So how the hell do I connect to my Redis database? Well, first things first, we head over to our details, and first thing over here, you can see Node. Right, so you can use different libraries. IO Redis is what we're going to use today, or you can use Node Redis like so. First thing I want to do is IO Redis, right? So I'm going to show you how we're going to actually go ahead and implement this. I'm going to drop the volume down a little bit down. There we go. So John Paul says, please don't delete this. Once it's done, I won't delete it, dude. I got you. All right, so at this point, let's go down here and you can see npm install. Now I'm using yarn today, so I'm going to go ahead and pop it in. So what I like to do is work in a way that we have two terminals. My left is my server running and my right is the one I can install stuff to, right? IO Redis, bam. Now I've installed IO Redis to my dependency tree, and there you go, just like that, we have it. Hide it away, and then I'm going to create something called a Redis file. So this file is going to be a singleton pattern, which is going to allow us to have one instance or connection to Redis that we can continuously use. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import Redis from IO Redis. Okay, now once I've got this open, what I want to do is make a connection to Redis. So what we do is we write const Redis equals new Redis, and inside of here it takes a string, and this is our Redis URL. So what I essentially need now is a URL that will connect me to the database. So you can see here, perfect example, just like so, right? And you can set and you can do a bunch of different things like this. So I need this magic string. So I'm going to show you how to get your magic string. So right here is the key part. Where we have the asterisks is, that is where your password goes. Okay, so you're going to click copy and you're going to paste your password in there, keeping the colon. So at this point, I'm going to copy that and I'll show you how we do it. So imagine we had a string like so, and this was the password. So you would click copy on the password over here, and you can simply just go in, and I'm not going to show you my password, but this is where your password would go. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pop it in just like so. So at this point now, what I need to do is create an environment file. So I'm going to create a .env.local to represent our local environment file. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and create it, make it very simple. I'm just going to call this one our Redis URL. So Redis URL equals, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to copy this just like so. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of these brackets. Now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop in my password, and then I'm going to save and close the file. Okay, so I'm going to hide the screen while I do that. So I'm going back, I'm going to talk you through it. I'm going to click on copy my password, and then I'm going in, I'm replacing where the X's were with my password, then I'm closing it. Okay, now I've got it inside of my environment variables, just like that, right? So easy as. So at this point now, I can go here and I can say process.environment. And now we can get our string out of it. Okay, so And if you are going to get bugs. I'm telling you now, you're going to get bugs, right? Because it's new tech. There's a lot of new things going on. There's a lot of bits where you can slip up. It's okay. Just take your time. As I mentioned before, you can even join our Discord server and our Zero to Full Stack Hero community. Ask for help. That is the best way to solve this problem, right? We're going to do the Redis URL. Okay, that was great. We're going to do the Redis URL. Okay, and then we're going to hit, and I'm going to say that it's always there, right? You can actually go ahead and check, make sure it's there and so forth, but that's fine for now, right? So at this point, I'm going to say export default Redis and hit save. Okay, so it looks pretty nice. And this is our singleton pattern. So every time I need my Redis object, I can just pull that now. Easy as, okay? So with that done now, what we can do is we can go ahead and make our call to that Redis singleton object. So how does this make sense, right? So when I go ahead and type a message in here, I should be able to actually go ahead and hit send. And then I want to populate a message and ping it into the backend, right? So into our backend, which is our Redis database. So I want it to go into our, so we should be able to see it in the data browser at that point. Okay, so let's do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and actually make this very clear. I'm going to delete the entire messages, right? So let's go ahead and get rid of that key. And in this case, I've got a bunch of others that I was showing in the coaching call that I was running inside of Zero to Full Stack Hero. And again, if you want to join us and you want to get more insight into how I learn all this and how I teach our students, papareact.com/course, first link in the description, right? And then smash that like button if you're enjoying this, right? So in this case, you can see no messages are here. So we're going to prove that it works, okay? So there's also other ways you can do it. You see that there's different ways using different libraries, and you can even use a REST API like that. It's fine. You can do so many different ways, okay? So let's go ahead and do the following. So at this point, I want to go ahead and go to our chat input, right? And here is where we're going to do our add our message to the server. Okay, so inside of chat input, now what I need to do is firstly, I need an ID. I need a unique ID that I can go ahead and pull from. So we're going to use a library today called UUID, right? So this is called UUID. Head over to Google, simply pop it in, and it's going to be an NPM package that you can see. Very popular NPM package. Okay, so I like that. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and install it, UUID, and we're going to pop it in and say yarn add UUID. There we go. And then go to the top of the file, and we're going to import version 4 as UUID. We're going to rename it from the UUID library. Okay, so basically we're pulling in something from there. There you go. And we're going to get an error saying you don't have your dev types, right? So in this case, this is our type definition. So the way you do this is you copy at types there, go over here, and you simply want to type in yarn add -d to make sure it's only a developer dependency. Okay, so you don't want to install that for like your production bundle. You just want it for your developer. And then you see it gives in our developer, it gives in our type definitions just for the devs, right? So at this point now, we can use this UUID. So I'm going to generate an ID so we can use it to go ahead and upload, right? So I'm going to say const ID equals UUID, just like that. That will give me a nice long string which resembles an ID. Now, some people are asking, what is that autocomplete that you're doing, dude? That is actually called GitHub Copilot, and it is paid, but it's actually incredible to help you out and sort of not do the code for you, but in the event where you forget things or you just need to search it up, it helps me be a faster, more efficient developer. So pretty cool, right? So at this point, we're going to go ahead and say const message, and we're going to create an object that I eventually want to push up to our Redis, right? So, and we are also going to be creating your own API endpoints today, a get and a post API endpoint. So it's a full stack build today, right? So at this point for the message, it's going to consist of an ID, which is going to be mapped to our ID. So we can shorthand it by just saying ID. It's going to have the message itself, which I'm going to use our message to send variable. Then we're going to have a few other things. Now, you should be using the server date, which is the date that is on the Redis server, because I could be in Dubai, you could be in London, someone else could be in Kenya, and we're all going to have different time zones. But what we're actually going to do today to prevent it from glitching out on the screen looking weird and having an undefined value is I'm going to use your computer, your time zone, and then when it goes ahead and uploads, it's going to temporarily have the time zone, and then it's going to change to the server time zone. So on the screen, we're always going to have a value, and I'll show you how it's all going to come together. Trust me, it's pretty cool how it works, right? So we're going to say create app, and I'm going to do underscore notation here. So create app, and then we're going to say date.now. And then we're going to have the username, profile pic, and email. So for now, for the username, I'm just going to say Elon Musk. right? Then I'm going to go ahead and say profile pic. And for this one, let's have, so we are going to have an image here. In this case, I want to just have, I'm actually going to get a Facebook image right now that I have up on here. So I'm going to hide the screen for a second while I get that. I'm going to grab a profile pic right here of a Facebook picture. Whoa! And bloody yeah, we got a wicked donation. Give me 1 second, guys. So I've got, okay. So I've got gone ahead and just used this, right? So I've gone ahead and used a profile pic like so. You can use any you want. This is the one that comes back from Facebook, right? But you can use any you want. Just make sure you whitelist it inside of your Next.js config, right? So firstly, thank you to Abo Adamo for a $10 donation. Appreciate you, dude. That's huge. Massive. And Joseph says GitHub Copilot is $10 a month. So Abo just paid for 1 month of GitHub Copilot. Thank you, dude. So yeah, we got the profile picture up in here. And then we're going to go ahead and have, that's just a picture of me as well. So let's make it Sunny, right? Sunny Saga, right? And then, and if you're not following me on Twitter, go follow me on Twitter. Sunny Saga, Twitter, that's it. I'm trying to grow on Twitter now, right? It's pretty cool. So on there, we've got an email as well. So in this case, let's just do Papa or React. If you ever want to email us about anything, papareact.team.gmail.com, right? So it's going to go ahead and populate. So now you can go ahead and see that we follow it. We've got a message, which is in the correct format. Okay. So the next natural thing is I want to cast this firstly to the correct message type. So I want to make sure that there's never that concept of it being, you know, wrong. I want to make it sort of, you know, protected by our own type definition. So firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our files right here. So into our files, I'm going to go down to the highest level where our package.json is, create a file called typings.d.ts. Right, and I'm going to pop in a new style. Oops, I'm going to pop in a new type. So this is a TypeScript definition that we're exporting for a message. So basically it resembles ID message created at username, profile pic, and email, right? And then what I can do is save this, and now I can import that in wherever I need to. So over here I can say this is going to be a message type. Oops, a message type. There we go. And we can import it from our typings. And what this does is it allows me to understand what is on the message, and it enforces that as well. So if I went in here and I tried to add something like a foo, right? You can see now it's saying, whoa. A foo doesn't assign to that, right? So you see, like you can go ahead and protect your code. So it stops you from having bugs. Good things, right? So at this point, we've got our chat input, and we're going to go ahead and make a request to Upstash, right? So we're going to push the data to our Upstash. So what we actually need to do here is push it to our backend API. Just want to mention as well, thank you, Abo, appreciate you, man. Ben says Copilot is also free for students. Yes, it is. If you can prove you're a student, it is free, right? Which means that they're actually pretty awesome on that, right? And we're almost at 400 likes. Let's go, guys. If you're watching the replay, smash the thumbs up. Let's pump this out to as many developers as possible. So what I'm going to do is create a handy little function here, and then we're going to call this upload message to Upstash. And this is inside of our other function, right? It's going to be an asynchronous function, and it's just going to be responsible for making that post request to the backend, okay? So at this point, what I'm going to do now is say const data equals await fetch, and I'm going to go ahead and have the following. I'm going to have /API/add message. So we're going to create this endpoint shortly. Now for the arguments, I'm going to say it's a post method, and for the headers, I am going to go ahead and state that it is a content type application JSON. So we are making sure that it's going to go ahead and pass in the data as a JSON. Okay. For the body, I'm going to stringify the message. Okay. And what I am going to do is I'm going to wrap it in an object, because I want to go ahead and just very clearly on the back end access it as our request, our body.message. Okay, so at this point now we've got we're stringifying our message object. Okay, so that will go ahead and basically make a call to our API/add message, which doesn't exist. Okay, so we have to actually go ahead and make that. So at that point, what I can do is I can go ahead and actually get my response. So in this case, this is going to be the response that's going to come back from here. Then we're going to say const data equals await res JSON, and that will give us back our data. Okay, so before we do anything further, we need to create this endpoint. So API/add message. So let's do that right now. Now, if you are using Next.js 13, you need to make sure that we are still using the old API routes. That's normal, right? That's how they're currently doing it. So we're going to create an API endpoint called add message. Add message.ts. And something to know, all I do is I copy the one that they give us, the hello, and there you go, bam, right? I copy that in. Simple as I get a nice template, I can start things off without, starting from scratch. So that's my way of doing things, right? I don't try and reinvent the wheel, right? So for this, we're going to go ahead and ensure that we actually return back a message, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to change that afterwards. So right now, this is a real endpoint. If I go to localhost/API, Vocals 3000/API/add message, it's there, right? So I'm going to firstly double check that it's a post request coming in, right? So I'm going to say if someone says, who's Johnny though, right? So I know. So at this point, we're going to say if it's not a post, then I'm going to return an incorrect message, right? So in this case, what we do is we return a status of 405 and the JSON saying method not allowed, right? And this is essentially going to tell the client that, whoa, you're making a GET request to a post endpoint, right? So in Next.js, you have to specify this as such. Okay, so now we can only accept post requests, which is good. Then what I want to do is I want to destructure the message from the body. Okay, so we passed in the message earlier on, so I'll show you where we did that. We went ahead and we passed in the message object, which is why I'm destructuring it from the body. So essentially I'm doing this, right? And I'm getting it out and I'm popping it in like so. Okay, now once we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and replace the timestamp with the server timestamp, just like I told you, right? So in the beginning, we're going to go ahead and have this date now, and that's for a reason, right? Because when we optimistically update it on the client, I want to show something, and I'll show you how it comes together afterwards. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new message, and we're essentially going to copy in the contents of the old message. So this is called a spread operator. And what this does is it opens up our current object inside of this one. So all the keys and values are going to get poured out into this one. So it's basically the same object at this point. But I'm going to replace the created at with the date now from the server. Okay. So what we're essentially doing is we're replacing the timestamp that the user had with the one on the server. Okay. Now that's pretty easy and then we need to push to Redis, right? So push to Upstash Redis DB. So at this point, now what I want to do is I need to pull on my Redis import, right? So in this case, I'm going to import from Redis. So remember we made that endpoint earlier. So we actually know the singleton pattern here. So this is my connection to Redis. I import it like so. And then what I do is I very simply go grab my Redis. I make my endpoint asynchronous, and I go ahead and I say await Redis dot. And what we're going to do is, because I'm setting a value for a hash, so what I'm essentially going to do here is I'm going to say which hash I'm going to basically push it into. So in this case, that's the first argument. In this case, we're going to go ahead and say hset, which is a special function. We're going to pass into the messages. Then I need to give it a key. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say that the message.id is my key, right? Then we're going to stringify the actual message itself into that value. So remember I showed you that structure previously inside of Redis. That's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to stringify the message. So this is essentially the magic line that goes ahead and pops in the data into our backend database, right? So if we go into our data browser, that's what's essentially pushing it into a messages, the key, and then the value, right? So let's load that one up. I don't know if there's anything in there. I was just showing some students that, right? But anyway, we'll let that load. Okay, so in that case, that's what's going to happen, right? So in this case, it will be pushing into the messages with the ID, with the key being stringified. So similar to how we just did that, right? Okay, and then at that point, we're going to return the item as follows. We're going to pass in the message being the new message. Okay, that's how we're going to send it. Now it's complaining because we have set the data to be of name here, because most of the time we pass back in name. So what I like to do here is I like to actually change things up. So if my data is in a sort of fulfilled state, I'm going to pass back a message, and that is going to be of type message. Okay, import my type definition. Great. If it's this, then what it's actually going to be is more of an error, right? So I'm going to say type error data equals error, and this is actually going to be body string. Okay, and in this case I would return that as body not allowed. Okay, and the way that we basically say is we say it could be of type data or it could be an error, right? So it could be fulfilled or it could be an error. Done. And there we have it. Method not allowed will get returned if it's not that. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and return the message. Great. So at this point now, we can go back to our chat input and this will have a place to go ahead and hit. That's pretty damn good. So we can actually go ahead and test this out. Okay, so first things first, I want to go ahead and just console log at this point to say console.log and say message added, bam, bam, bam. And then I'm going to go ahead and say data, right? And I'm simply going to call this function here. Okay. So just like that, I'm going to call the function, right? So now what we have is inside of our add message function, I am calling our inner function, upload message to Upstash. And yes, you can refactor that out if you like. It's completely up to you. I would probably refactor this out in production. So that's you could definitely do that. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's refresh. And sometimes we're going to get this error. I find that it pops up quite a bit when we're actually doing this. So I'm going to type in hello world. Now remember, I don't need to be logged in at the moment because we just got some default values here. So I'm going to say hello world, send, and see what just happened. It showed to the user that it was immediate. But if I inspect now, message added and the object is there. See, the message came back, which means that it had full circle, right? Which is damn good. So that's a good sign. And let's go over here and let's hit the refresh button. And just like that, we made a connection to our Redis database at Upstash, and we went ahead and popped into our messages over here. So that right there is the message from the user. Okay, damn straight, powerful, easy, very simple to do. So Upstash, great job with your APIs, right? Really, really good stuff. So at this point, that looks pretty nice. So now what we could do is just pop in another message saying this is pretty cool. Hit enter, and just like that, it will go ahead and pop it into the backend. So as you can see, message added. Now there was a slight delay there, which is completely fine because you're making an asynchronous request to your API to Upstash, and then it's got to come back. Again, REST APIs are being made, and then it comes back. So how do we go ahead and address this issue? All I want to do right now is update the immediate client state. So I want it to show me that, bam, it was immediately added. And then what I want it to kind of do is roll it back if there was an error at any point. How the hell do we do that? Right? Well, traditionally, it would have been kind of a pain to do that. But with SWR, so data fetching hooks from the guys over at Vercel, it's actually pretty simple to do this. So this is where this comes into play. So we're going to use something called SWR. I actually always forget, stale while revalidate, right? HTTP cache invalidation strategy. And basically, it's a really efficient way of fetching our data and caching it and doing all that kind of cool stuff as well, right? So let's go ahead and install this. Let's click get started. And first thing we want to do is add it into our dependency tree. So head over to our code. Let's go ahead and bam, head over to our code. And let's pop this back on the side just like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and make life a little bit easier for me and do that. There you go. Okay, so let's head over to our code and let's head over to our terminal and let's do yarn add SWR. Cool, we've added it in super fast. Then we go down here and this is the pattern, right? So typically you have a fetcher, and all this is doing is it's a function that accepts some arguments, and then it goes ahead and it makes that fetch recall or makes that kind of asynchronous request across with a REST API call, and then you pass to JSON. It sounds more complicated than it is. It's actually very simple. We just did it right now, right? We made a fetch, except this time we'll be probably making a get request, right? It doesn't matter. You could do a post as well. Really don't matter, right? So at this point, you can create your own fetcher, do whatever you want to do with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use, instead of this fetcher, we're going to create something similar. But in order to do this, I need a way to first fetch all of our messages, okay? So let's have what we need to now do is pause. And we need to go ahead and create a way to basically fetch all of the messages from the database, right? So from our Redis database. So the cool part about this is when I do this using SWR, let's imagine I do it in the chat component. It's going to cache that value, okay? Now, if I'm in a completely different component somewhere else, for example, the message list, wherever it made the request to first, that's where it's going to go ahead and make the request and it'll cache it. Now, if this component over here needs it as well, it's just going to go straight into the cache and get the value out rather than make a second request. And then it's got all these cool things like when you refocus on the window or refetch, you can have interval refetching, a bunch of other stuff, as well as optimistic updates, which allows us to have that immediate UI impact or update. So It's damn cool, okay? and that is true excitement because I thought it was pretty cool, right? So at this point, we've got the chat input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the following. I'm going to get some data, an error, and something called a mutate, right? And I will explain what all of these are soon. Code Guillaume, what's up, dude? Good to see you in the house. We're going to go ahead and say equals use SWR. Okay, use SWR. And I'm going to import that from the SWR library. Nice. And then what I'm going to do is the first argument is something called a key. Now, the way that people tend to do this, and do not get it confused, the key can be anything, right? It can actually be anything, but it throws you off in the beginning when you're learning because you think it's the root, right? It doesn't have to be the root, but it kind of makes sense because we're going to cache the response based on whatever the root was. So in this case, if I was to go ahead and get the, I'm going to make a call here called get messages. Okay, but this could actually just be called messages for all we care, right? It doesn't matter. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and make a piece of, like, I'm going to set a piece of cache here called API get messages. And the way to fetch the information for that is going to be at, we're going to create a function and we're going to call it the fetcher, right? So I'm going to create this function and then I'm going to move it somewhere else. So I'm going to create a utils folder right now. So up to my top level, I'm going to create a utils, or you can make a lib folder. I really don't care. It's up to you. Right, and we're going to create something called a fetch messages function. So we're going to create a fetch messages. Hey, Kiko, so good to see you, my friend. Enjoy your day and weekend, bro. Thank you so much, Kobe Guillaume. I love to see you here, dude. So we're going to create a TypeScript file, right? And then inside of here, oh no, don't do that. Type it correctly. Rename messages. OCD is kicking in messages. There we go. Nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to import our type definitions like so. And we're going to make a function. So we're going to say export. Actually, we'll do it after. We'll say const fetcher. Right? It can be called whatever you want. Doesn't matter. It's going to be an asynchronous function. And the whole goal of this function is to basically make a request to our API get messages, which we haven't created yet, but it's going to be responsible for pulling in that information, right? So first things first, we're going to do const res equals await fetch API get messages, right? So get messages. We have already got add messages. I'm going to make one for get messages. Then I'm going to say the const data equals await res.json. So we're going to pass it afterwards. Okay. Mama says, why don't you guys use TurboPat for this project? Because there's so much new tech. TurboPat was giving me a few bugs. I didn't want to layer it up and get everything kind of broken at one point. So it's fine. It's okay. Okay. So at this point, we've got this come back. Now, this is actually going to be the inside of data, we can get the messages back, right? So I'm going to say the messages is actually going to be the so in this case, you could do it like that and you can get back of the messages, or you can just say that this is of type message array, right? So this is going to be an array of messages that comes back. Okay, so the way we're going to build that endpoint is it's going to return this, right? And we're going to put it inside of the body in the form of a messages key, okay? And then we need to just return our messages. So simple as return and the messages, done. Okay, then we're going to do a default export. So export default fetcher, bam, hit save. Looks pretty good so far. Okay, so at this point, let's go ahead and go back to our code. So back to our chat input, and then here we can import our fetcher function, right? So fetcher from fetch messages, done. So at this point now, if I was to console log, the data would probably get an error, right? The reason being would get an error is because there's nothing there, right? You see, like right now, and what I want to show you, I want to prove a point here. Automatic retries. So this is kind of cool. Jason Alechi says, my first time catching you live. Thank you, dude. What's up? So here right now, if it tries to make a fetch request and it fails, it automatically retries, which is really cool, right? Because sometimes the first request might fail for a normal, genuine reason, and the second one might go through. So automatic request by default retries, really nice, right? So in this case, I'm going to create this endpoint so it's not just hitting my, like that for no reason. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually do that right now. So first things first, we are going to go ahead and create an endpoint over here. So pages API, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. Oh, I love this song, right? I'm going to call this one get messages. And bam, we are at 400 likes just like that. That is what I'm talking about. Let's go, guys. Let's keep pumping that number up. That helps the video get out to as many developers as possible. Get messages.ts, right? And inside of here, again, I'm going to do our same trick that we do every time, right? In fact, I'm going to grab my add messages. I'm going to copy the code inside of here, and I'm just going to paste it into my get messages over here like so, right? And now I can just restructure it as I need it. So for the get messages, very simple, very similar, sorry, but different. We're not going to do a get. We're gonna make sure that it's only get requests that come through because we're fetching data now. Okay. Now, as for the rest of this, we can go ahead and remove it. Okay, simple as. So what I want to do now is I want to make a fetch call to our Redis database. And because we're accessing something called a hash, what I can do is I can use something called hvals, and I can access the messages by passing in the key for the messages. So in that case, it will return me an array of all the things that I'm after. You can use a few methods. You can use hget, or a bunch of others, but I'm using hvals, right? So in this case, we're going to do our messages response equals await, and we're going to go to our Redis, which I imported up here, and we're going to say hvals, and I'm going to go ahead and give the key for the messages. Okay, now that will come back with the messages that we need. So what I can now do is I need to pass the response of each of the messages. So I'll write it out for you so that way you guys can see what's going on. Well, first things first, I need to go ahead and pass it out, and literally it's done it as I needed it. All right, so in this case, we're going to do that, and then I'm going to say we're going to get the response, and firstly we're going to pass it. Okay, so every single value that comes back, remember it got stored as a kind of, screwed up JSON stringified value. So you see this, that's a JSON stringified value. So first things first, we map through and we pass the values back into an object. Okay, and then what we want to do, thank you so much for the amazing comments, Codemania, Shahada, and Jason, incredible comments, right? And then on the server, we're also going to sort. Okay, so I'm going to do a very simple sort here. You can probably do it on, you can go ahead and move this onto Redis as well, but I'm just going to make it simple here. We're going to do a simple sort, and all we need to do here is exactly that, right? We're going to go through and say for every single object, sort it in, I believe, ascending order. So basically the most recent one is at the top, right? If I'm wrong there, I'm wrong, right? It could be descending, ascending. I just do it. I just swap them around until it works, right? That's the truth. B created that minus A created that. And basically, this is going to do a comparison saying if this one is less than this one, then it's going to push that in front of it, right? So it's just sorting them out on the server. And then we're going to return the messages, okay? So then we're going to return the messages like so. Right? And because it's already here, we're returning the messages just like that. So I need to update the type that we return. So this is going to be a messages array. And again, the error data is perfectly fine. So now we have our API endpoint. So just like that now, we should be hitting an endpoint because this should no longer be dead. Now you can see, well, hey, we've got an API endpoint. So if I was to go ahead and refresh, just like that, we get back our messages, and this is actually coming from our Redis database, guys. So that's pretty damn cool. So if I refresh, notice how ignore that. That's actually this little warning that you see, and you're going to keep seeing it, is from one of my what's it called? React Dev. It's from something I've installed, some other thing, but don't worry about it for now. Okay. So at this point, we've got the two that come back. So you can do things like server-side checking it, right? So you can actually go ahead and say, if there is no data, it's loading and so forth. So you could, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So we've got the chat input. Actually, no, first. Okay, one thing at a time, right? So what we've done now is we fetch the information and then we store it in the cache. And the key for accessing that cache is API/get messages. Remember, this could be literally ABC. It doesn't matter, right? It's still going to be cached as that value. So what we can now do, which is really cool, right? I'm going to show you how we do an optimistic update. Okay. So notice how I'm logging out the data, right? So what we can do is when we make any modification, we can actually go ahead and mutate that value inside that cache. And we can do it in a way that's like, it can be synchronous. So we can do an asynchronous call to anything that will update it, but it gets even better. We can actually go ahead and optimistically update it, which means that we can tell it, this is the value you're going to have. And then in the background, it makes the fetch request. So imagine it quickly updates on the client, makes the fetch request in the background, and then it replaces it and it double checks that, okay, you're good. All right. If it wasn't that, it would roll back. So you see how it's pretty cool, right? It's kind of cool how it works. So that way on your client, they always get this like seamlessly instant experience, right? That's how you do that trick, right? So at this point, we've got the message added down here. So instead of that kind of, pointless bit of text, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the following. So I'm going to say await mutate, and mutate is the keyword here. So what we do is we're going to say, I'm going to change this cache. Okay, I'm going to change the cache. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to say, and by the way, we don't have to give it a key because it's already, we pull it out of this call. So it's already bound to that key because we're pulling it from here, right? There is another way to get mutate that you have to pass the key in. Because we're pulling it out at the same time, it's bound to it. So now all I need to do is I pass in the original function to go ahead and make the call, the fetch call. So that's the call, right? So that's going to go ahead and make a call to go ahead and get back the thing. Now in this case, that's going to error out because it's not returning the expected data that we want. And I'll show you how we fix this in a second, right? So if I was just to do this, first things first, this will break because this right here is originally, if we have a look and inspect this, I'm just going to go ahead and pop this under here. This right here is an array. It's an array of 2 objects, right? Now over here, we're just returning back a single message, right? Which doesn't fit our structure. Now what we need to do is basically get all the messages back. So the way we do it is we get all of the messages that come back. So the way I can do that is I can go ahead and say the following. So I'm going to say the messages are actually going to be the new message that came back. So simply as, right? So in this case, we can go ahead and get the message out of here. So we can say message equals data.message. Or you can destructure it, really up to you, don't mind. Doesn't have any type, that's fine. So in this case, let me just double check something. We've got the, right. This comes back as any, so we can actually destructure it here to be fair. We can say message, and we're getting a error because we haven't done this. So I'm gonna check something quickly. Okay, so what I want you to do now is we're gonna say that it's referenced directly in its own thing. Okay, that's fine. So we get this back. Okay, so what I could do here is I could say that the response.json promise any. I think we can mask it in here, can we? I think we can do that, no? No, we can't do that. Okay, anyway, that's fine. I'll show you how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say that the data, I'm gonna just pass it together here. I'll say that the data comes back. Oops, what have I done? Yeah, there we go. The data, I'm gonna do .then. I'm gonna say res JSON. I'm just gonna pass it over here. You can really do it however you want, it's fine. And then I'm gonna say that the data, now I can access that data.message, right, just like that. I'm now gonna do the following. I'm gonna say that we should await, right, mutate. I'm gonna say await, no, sorry, what am I doing? Yeah, I'm gonna return from here the new message, right? So the new message will be the first entry in the array. So we say data.message because this is what came back from the newly added message. Then what I do is I copy out the rest of the messages. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and enforce that it's already there. Now messages, you're probably wondering, we don't have messages. That's because I'm going to rename our data over here to messages. So it makes a little bit more sense, right? And I'm going to go ahead and console log this out as well. Nice, just like that. Right. So what this is doing now is it's actually going to go ahead and let's see, what was also the error here? Oh, I forgot to make this entire function asynchronous. Async. There we go. Yeah. So now what you can see is it's going to go ahead and mutate, which means it's going to update the store when I send that message. So let's see this in action, right? And I'm going to show you how it's slightly delayed at the moment, okay? So it's going to be slightly delayed. So if what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the following. I'm going to say, hello world. So in that case, you see, we just get some re-renders because I'm console logging at the top, right? And then I'm going to say send. Now, slight delay, but 3, right? But there's still a delay, right? We can't ignore that there's still a delay. So what we can do now is we can have something called optimistic data, which is pretty damn cool, right? So now, because I have the actual message that I'm actually pushing in, we can say optimistically, I'm going to render it beforehand. And I already know the value because I already know that the value that comes back is going to be in the same structure as that. Yeah. It's going to be the exact same structure. The value of created that might be different, but it'll swap it in when it comes. That's fine. Right. So at this point, I can say optimistic data is going to be the message that we send from the client side plus all the messages that we currently have, right? And notice how I'm preparing in advance there, right? We can have a little protector there as well, okay? So we have this, as Mark said, you will say, right? So we have this. And then what I want to do is I want to have something called rollback on error. This is really handy. If there's ever an error, it will just roll back the previous cache value. Okay, so let's think about what it's doing now. it's going to go ahead, and what we should see now is when I do this call, it will be instant, and then it will just go ahead and replace the value as it comes in. So this is instant, right? So as soon as I do this, you should see a 4. Bam, 4. And then you see how it came in again, right? So that just shows you that it did the optimistic update, then the other one finished, and then it replaced the contents of the cache. That's sick. That is so cool, right? So basically that means that now on the client side, when we push the message in to the client, it's like, bam, it just worked, right? And if only if there was an error, would it just come back and it would detach it away. Okay, so the really cool part now is where we can essentially effectively replace Redux. Right? Yes, I'm saying it, right? We can effectively replace Redux here, is because I don't need to have some state manager. Now I can use the same pattern inside of our messages. And what it will do is, because it already has the access to this, whatever one called the value first, right? It's going to go ahead and get the cache value from there, right? And notice how a few things happen. When I go ahead and click in and refocus, it will fetch again. Right? So when I come back into the screen and I kind of do stuff around it, it will refetch. Now I think, oh, so here, right, there's it there? No? Okay, anyway, it does do that. It refetches, right? So at this point, we're going to go to our messages list. Right, now let's go ahead and see. Cactus says, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and fetch some lunch. It's definitely not going to be an asynchronous request. I'll see you later. See you later, dude. That's pretty jokes. All right, so we're going to now pop in the messages. So it's actually way easier than you think. I already did the hard work. I already got all the messages like sent out when we did chat input. So all I'm going to do basically is copy that, go over to my get messages, go over to my my message list, paste it in. Easy as. And I'm going to make sure that I get my use SWR, right? So I'm going to go ahead and grab that from the following. So I'm going to grab it from here, bam, okay? And then I'm going to import my fetcher, okay? Now, what's really cool, right? And I know I keep saying it, but it is damn cool, right? Is firstly, we are using our client side. So I need to make sure I go ahead and make this a client component, use client. And yes, you can probably, refactor some stuff, which isn't. It's completely cool. It's up to you. So as you can see now, what's nice is that it's actually, and mine are only showing twice, by the way, because I've got the dev tools, right? So it's you see it's actually only logged out once, but the dev tools are making it do it twice, right? Annoying. But at this point, what I'm going to do is, if I was to console log, so it's actually only fetched the messages once, right? Even though we've used it here, because what it's essentially done is it's deduplicated the requests. So it only sends one request, as opposed to if we had a normal fetch in the use effect, it would go ahead and send it like twice, right? So at this point now, I want to go ahead and render out the messages as forward, right? And it's actually a lot easier than you think, right? So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say inside of our div, I want to render out our messages, and we're going to say that it could be undefined in the beginning. We're going to map through and say for every single message, I want to render out, let's just do a p tag for now, right? So a p tag saying, let's just have a div and a p tag inside of it saying the message, and this is going to be casted to a message type. So what we can actually do here is where we have use SWR, I can actually cast this to a message just like that, right? And that will actually tell it that it's of type message. So now you can see of type message. So message dot, I don't even have to guess, right? I can see that message dot message is the one, and then bam. And now, whoa, and we need to give it keys. Remember, if you're ever mapping through things, we need to give it a key. So we need to say key is message dot ID, bam, just like that, and hit the refresh button. And now, just like that, we've got, again, and ignore that, super annoying, extra attributes from the server, body HTML. I think that's because I have got in my head component, in my body header, no, that's fine. I've got an extra CSC shortcut listen. Yes, that's probably one of my extra things. That's fine. But basically, you can see that there we are. Yeah. So let's give this a try and see how it updates. So what we should be seeing now is, because the mutate function is happening on the chat input, it should update the cache, which means that this will re-render. So this is amazing. Hit enter, bam, just like that. It's amazing. It works, and it's instant. That is so powerful, man. That is actually so powerful. Hiva Kia, what's up, dude? we're going to get rid of that because it's spamming the console. Okay, so just like that, bang in. Look at that, it works. And again, we've got that from just an extra attribute. Ignore it. Right, this is dope. Right, amazing. Instant up on there, and when we refresh, it's there as well. Right, so at this point now, what we can do is we can actually go ahead and firstly I want to make the message component a little bit more interesting than what we just have here. So let's actually start styling out our message component. So message list, we're going to go ahead and make this an actual component itself, right? So command B, we're going to create a message component .tsx rfc here, bam, oops, and we have our message component. Okay, inside of here we're going to expect a few different arguments. We can get rid of that. We're going to have our props that come in. Right, now the props that we're going to pass through here are going to be the following. We've got a key, which is going to be a string. We have got a message, and we've got a, which we need to import, and we've got a session. Right, now the session I'll come to afterwards. We'll do the session. It's a bit more intricate. Right, I'll show you how that works. So at this point we can go ahead and get our props from here. We can map it through like this. We can say our props are of type props, and then we can pull in our message like so. Okay, and firstly, sorry, we don't need the key. The key is for the mapping. We just care about the message, right? So that's pretty clean. So at this point, we can go back to our message list, and instead of this, we can go and pass it through. We can say message component is going to be this. The key for the mapping. Remember, every component that maps through has a key because it's how React operates. Message.id, awesome. And then we can pass in the message, the entire message like so. Oh, nice. Okay, almost at 500 likes. Let's go, guys. That is sick. All right, so message component, and now you can see message component is getting rendered out. So we can start to style it accordingly on the front end. Right, so we got the message, and inside of here, we're going to go ahead and create this to look a bit like this now. Remember, it's going to vary based on if you're the sender and you're logged in, it's going to show this. If you're the receiver, it's going to show this. Okay, so let's do that now. So first things first, we're going to have a div. Inside of this, we're going to have a div, and then we're going to have an image tag. So an image tag. Okay. And now for this, we're going to have a source, and this source is going to be message.profilepic. Okay. And remember, that's the message profile picture that we had. The rest of the stuff is going to be things like styling, height and width, and so forth. So I'm just going to go ahead, shortcut this in and pop it in like so. We have the profile picture, and now we do have an error now, because if I was to refresh, we can see failed to construct image. Sorry, that's wrong. This image needs to be a next image. There we go. Okay, logged in as Sunny, and then we have a problem here because we haven't whitelisted the Facebook backend, right? So let's go into our next config and let's whitelist Facebook's backend. So where they're coming from. Okay. Now we go back. We restart our server because we've changed our Next.js. So I've gone ahead and restarted the server. Command J to hide it. And refresh refresh our web page. Look at that. And just like that, we should see something. There we go. Hey, right. So we got all the pictures that are coming from that test entry that we had initially, right? So next up, underneath this div, I'm going to sort of style it out accordingly, right? But underneath this, I'm going to have a div. Inside of there, I'm going to have a p tag. This will be the message username. And what's nice about TypeScript is you can see the clear benefit, right? Just by having this, you can start having reassurance that if I type in this field, it's going to go ahead and allow me to make sure that it's actually there because we type checked it, right? So inside of here, I'm going to have another div with a p tag, and this one is going to be for the message itself. So message.message, .message. Okay, and under here we're gonna have a p tag, which is gonna be for the time of the p tag, and this is gonna have the message.created at like so. Okay, so that's just a timestamp right now. Okay, so I'm gonna just show you how you can do this, but new date message.created at, and then you can do something like 2 locale date string, whatever you want here, right? So 2 locale strings to that one. See how that looks. You can see there we've got look 2 locale. We've got a better one than that. I think it's this one, morning. Yep, there we go. So right now it's just showing that, but eventually I want to have it like relative, like proper relative. So it shows like, 2 seconds ago, that kind of stuff. So I'll show you how we're going to implement that as well. Okay. So first things first, to style this up, make it look nice. Outermost div. Let's go ahead and give it a class name and say flex. So it's going to be a flex box. It's going to be fit only to its width that it needs to be. And then it's going to have inside this div, we're going to say that this picture should never shrink. So if the page gets smaller and the message is big, never shrink the div which is containing the image. Okay, for the outermost one, we're not going to start that. For the p tag, I simply want to go ahead and have a custom text styling, right? So I'm going to have a text size of a custom value, so 0.65 rem, padding of 2 and padding bottom of 2 pixels. So very small value there. So I need to refresh sometimes in order to see some of these, right? Because some of these are custom values. It's a server component, which means that we need to have a like a proper refresh. And you're going to find that happens a bit when you're using server components until it's fixed, right? So we're going to make this flex. Items should be at the end. And then for this inner div, I want to give it the following. I'm going to say padding X of 3, padding Y of 2, round it off. Width should be exactly as much as it needs. And the text should be white. Okay, cool. Let's give that in. So the text is white right now. Now I want to just go ahead and right now I'm just going to make it so they're all blue, right? Or they're all red by default. Okay, so let's go ahead and make it all red. But eventually we'll have it if it's a user and that kind of thing. If they're signed in, it's going to be theirs and so forth, right? And the final one, the p tag at the back, we're going to give that a custom amount of custom size, make it gray and make it italic as well. Okay, so we are going to upgrade these styles afterwards to ensure that if you are signed in, it will reflect accordingly. So right now we have this looking pretty nice, right? And the same goes for the top as well. I'm going to make sure that this is a text red 400. So over here, this one is going to be the username, text red 400. And then just like that, we have a very nice little approach. Now the message list is where it's all rendering out, right? So over here, we need to space these out. They're too stuck up right now, right? So we're going to go to the class name and then we're going to go ahead and do the following. We're going to say space between all of these Y children of 5. The minute I hit save, it spaces them out. Padding X on the 5, padding on the top of 8, padding on the bottom of 32, and I'll show you why. Now we need padding on the bottom of 32 so that way when you scroll down, you've actually got more room to scroll past. If it didn't have any padding, imagine that was the bottom there, you would cut off that bottom message. So you need to have enough padding so that way you can go past that. So padding of 32 does the trick, right? And then we're going to have a max width of 2XL because it kind of starts getting hard to read after that. Max width on the extra large screen of 4XL, and then we're going to center the elements as well. So, and then we're going to say MX auto as well. Okay, hit save, and now you can see it centers it after a certain point. And you can say this is dope. Bam, amazing, it works, right? There we go. And I've even got a really long text that I'm going to go ahead and pop in right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now, and I'll come back on the screen in a sec. So we all know about lorem ipsum, right? So there we go, lorem ipsum. There you go, nice. Okay, so we've got some lorem ipsum stuff happening. And before we carry on now, you see at the bottom right there, so first little thing that we've noticed. Let's go ahead and get that fixed up. So chat input, what we needed to say was the background should have been white. So background should have been white. And just like that, we can go ahead and cover it in. But that is exactly what I was talking about. Now, if you didn't have padding 32, can you see how we've got extra padding, which means I can scroll to the last message down here. If we didn't have that, you can see it would have been an issue. But right now it's looking damn good, right? We still need to do our sign in, our sign out, and we need to go ahead and also do our pusher. So in this case, it won't actually update if someone else is on there. So let's go ahead and imagine we had 2 windows open, right? Well, let's actually screw it and say we have 3 windows open. I eventually want it to be a case that we have all of these windows open, and when I type in hello world, right, what I should see here is that this one has hello world, but you see these 2 aren't updating. So we're going to add something called pusher, so that way we have a pub sub model whereby everyone would subscribe to this. The only way it would update now is if I click into it, then it has, because of SWR, it refetches, right? But we want to make it automatically doing that, right? So it's kind of like always on a real-time connection. Right now, it's only when you refocus the window that it makes a second refetch call. And you don't want to have things like interval refetching, because that can also cause issues where you're just unnecessarily pinging the server. So we're going to go ahead and introduce that as well in just a second. Doing absolutely amazing so far, nearly at 500 likes. Quick little water break. But tell me right now if you're enjoying the stream. Oh, that was a big water break. Okay, so at this point, let's jump into the next one. So we've got our login here. So David says, great stream. Thank you, dude. I appreciate you, man. So now what we're going to do is we're going to style it based on if it's a user. And then what I'm going to do is make it eventually connect it to a, okay, so we can do the what now. I'll show you how we do it. So at this point, I'm going to make it, if it's a user, it will render this side, right? And then we're going to eventually connect that to your session instead. Okay, so the nice thing about componentizing all of this stuff is that you can go ahead and simply do it. And I want to mention something now inside of my message list. Okay, this is a client component, that's fine. So if we go to our message component here, right? So inside of our message component now, I'm simply going to have a toggle here saying is user. Okay, const is user. And right now I'm just going to say is true. Right? So all the messages will eventually be blue on the other side, right? So if you're the one sending it, it should be on the other side, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Himanshu, what is up, dude? Awesome stuff. So I'm going to now update it. So if the user is there, it's going to go ahead and render certain styles as well. So the way we do this is we simply wrap this in some JSX. We add curly backticks to make sure that we can interpolate. And now I can go ahead and add in extras. So I can say if it's the user, then I'm going to add in margin left of auto, right? And at this point now, if it's the user, so in this case it's true, it will go ahead and add in a margin left of auto, right? Now for this one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And remember, I probably need to go ahead and refresh the page as well. Then it will kick in because we're server rendering it. There you go. Okay, so server rendering has its little perks and it also has down moments. That's one of them. So here we'll say is user. And I'm going to say that the order should be -2, right? So as an order should be 2. And what this is going to do, it's going to rearrange it. So this picture is going to take more precedent in the order, which means it's going to go this direction, right? So now if I do that, you can see it will go in front of it. So there you go. So 1, 2. So it took, and now it's on the front side, right? And what we can do is we can give this one a minus value and it will go backwards, right? So you see what we're doing there. It's kind of cool, right? So now I go down to my first p tag, and here I go ahead and I pop in our curly brackets. Oh, don't do that. Add backticks. I'm going to say is user. Again, you can see the pattern here, right? We're basically, yeah, we're going to go ahead and, but this time I'm actually going to change something here. You can't set a value by default and then only enter in a color. You have to do it in the following way. We have to say a ternary operator. So if it's the user, I'm going to say that the text should be blue and I want the text to be right aligned. Okay. Otherwise, I want the text to be red and I want the text left aligned. Okay. So now what we've done there is if I hit refresh, now the text should be blue. So Sunny Sanger is blue and it's right aligned. Nice. We're going to do the same thing going down. So the same thing over here as well. So backticks, and then we've got our backticks in place just like that. And then we're going to say if it's a user is a user. Again, we are going to get rid of our BG. And here I'm going to say if it's a user, then sorry, okay, full screen, it throws me off sometimes. Okay, if it's a user, then I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's a BG blue of 400, margin left of auto, and I'm gonna give it an order of 2, right? So that should push it in a front direction as well. And then we're gonna say a BG red, so over here, background should be red of 400 if it's not, right? So this will show you that. So refresh, and pow, we have a blue one. Right, really nice. The final one is just to make this text right, so it sticks to this side as opposed to the other side. So let's give that a final run. So let's go ahead and pop this in now. Right, so let's go ahead and do this. Doom, and then I'm going to say is user, and I'm going to go ahead and pop in text right. So text right. Okay, now just like that, we have a toggle. Okay, so what's cool about this now is if I go over here and I say is the user false, boom. If it's a user, boom, right? So really nice. Look at that. Oh, right? So if you're logged in, it will basically be on that side. If you're false, it'll be on that side. And then I'm going to attach that to the session object in a sec, right down the line, right? So if you're signed in, it would be your message on the right and so forth. Okay, so pretty cool. Okay, now let's go ahead and actually set things up with our authentication. So now is the moment where we've got this working. Wow, this is cool. Actually, you know what? Let's not do authentication right now. Let's do firstly pusher. Pusher is going to allow us to synchronize all of our messages across each of the clients. And then we're actually going to go ahead and add in the authentication, and then we are golden, right? So we're very close and we're doing very well for time. Right, so at this point now, I want to go ahead and head over to Pusher. So Pusher is what we're going to be using to power our real-time experience. So in this case, you can see Pusher is basically a pub sub model. Now, if you don't know what a pub sub model is, essentially what you have is you can actually, all of your clients can subscribe to listen to a specific topic, right? So in this case, let's call the topic messages. So imagine every single client that is on this chat is subscribed to that messages, and you can make this for chat rooms and so forth, right? And now every time someone sends a message on the backend API, when there's a new message, what we can do is, which is kind of cool, we can go ahead and say, push a message to the messages chat saying new message. And now everyone who subscribes says, whoa, there's a new message, add that message into my cache. And what's really nice about this is that it actually goes ahead and uses use SWR to efficiently, optimistically render the update. So pretty damn nice, okay? So at this point now, I will show you how we do this. So I'm going to go ahead and say, so pub sub, you see there we've got notifications and we've got pub sub node, and we've got our JavaScript as well. So in this case, you can subscribe to a channel. So in this case, messages, you bind to a new message event that comes in. So in this case, we could just say new message, and then you could do something. In this case, we're going to update the state. And over here, when on the client, when we actually add a message, we simply just add it in there. So I'm going to sign in to an account right now on my side. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop in my sign in. So I've actually done this super easy. I've signed in already. So I'm going to go ahead and create another one. So I think I get two, or can I not get two? So I'm going to manage. I'm going to create an app. Let's call this Fair Socks 2. Let's go ahead and do this and blah, blah. Let's do front end is going to be React, and then the back end is going to be Node.js. Create apps from multiple environments, you can do, it's fine. And you can see you can choose a cluster as well. So we are on Fair Socks number 2, right? So at this point, nice, pretty cool. I'm going to click into app keys in just a second as well. But first off, to make sure that we can go ahead and get this set up nicely, we need to install 2 dependencies, okay? So the first one that we need to install is something called Pusher. Right, this is going to be for our server. The second one that we're going to install is called Pusher.js. So they've just done this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you how we do it. So we need 2 packages. One is for our backend, one is for our front end. So yarn add, and we're going to add it in this. We can just add it in the same course easy. We can say Pusher.js. So Pusher.js is the front end, Pusher is the backend. Okay. So simply put, I can work. That's sick. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and do Command J. So that's really nice. And then I've got my pusher laid out. So now we can use this to go ahead and set things up. So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to go ahead and create a pusher.ts file, which is going to be same thing that we did before, a singleton pattern. So just like we have Redis, I'm going to have a pusher.ts file, right? Now inside of here, I'm going to import pusher from pusher and import client pusher from pusher.js. Okay, and then I'm going to have 2 exports. So I'm going to have an export const server pusher, right? This is going to be my instance for the server, right? So when we do any Node.js stuff, right? Then I'm going to have a client pusher, const client pusher. And now the client pusher is safe to go ahead and share those keys around there because it's going to be a client side thing. So in this case, the client pusher is fairly straightforward, right? We can actually go ahead and use this one right here to actually do this. So I'm going to copy the value right there. And for mine, I can simply go ahead and pop it in like so. So just like that, I've got my client ID, my cluster, and we can actually force TLS connection as well. So you can, if you want to do, you can force TLS as well. Okay. So you can do that for your socket connection. And then what we're going to do is, and obviously, yes, you can and should be putting these in environment variables. Okay. So I'm just trying to push through it, not spend too much time on that, but because we're going to have a bit more that we're going to have to set up here as well. Right. So now what I want to do is I just want to show you the structure of the next one. So I'm going to have the following. So I've just given a nice little outline of what I expect here. So in this client, and the server side, it's more hidden, okay? So again, you should be setting these as environment variables, right? I showed you how to do one. You do them same for this one as well. I'm just going to try and breeze over this bit. So I'm going to pop these in. These should be process.env and so forth. Now, this is what it will look like. App ID, key, and I've changed the password here, so it's absolutely, you can't do anything with it. That's going to be some secret password, cluster, and use TLS true, right? So in this case, we were using TLS. You can force TLS on the front as well. All right, so it's just forces a solid connection, right? A secure connection. So where do you get your credentials from? I'm going to show you right now. So you're going to click on app keys. It's going to pop up, and then you're going to copy it, paste it in here, replace it inside of your environment variables, not like this. We're in just a quick YouTube video, so that's why I'm not doing it right now. Okay, but I'm going to do that right now. I'm clicking on app keys. Then mine are loading up on the screen, so I go ahead and I copy them. So I'm running it through now. I click copy. Now I go back and I've got a bunch of different values that came back. So I'm going to swap those values into where I had it inside of the stream. So I'm going to do that right now. So I've now swapped out my secret, all of that good stuff. And I've saved the file and I've gone ahead and, right. So in this case, I'm hiding my key, right? So I've got a nice little trick here. I'm hiding the key right now, okay? So right now you see I've got my app, my key, my secret key is hidden, and cluster, right? So there's a secret key there. There's a secret and a value. So I'm going to save the file and close it. This is how we're going to export and have access to these as well. All right, so very straightforward. Now I'm going to save that, remove my comment, and bam, I have access to the singleton pattern. Okay, so at this point now, fairly straightforward. All I need to do is essentially go ahead and, oh my God, okay, well, that was stupid. Okay, I mean, I'm just gonna breeze over it, right? If someone gets into that, I can change it. It's fine. So I'm going to go to something called the debug console. So at the debug console, I can just listen for events now. So what I want to do is whenever we add a message on the server, so in the add message function, I'm going to go into here, and this is where I'm basically going to say, once you've pushed a message successfully, we should also ping pusher to tell everyone that it's there. I know. The irony of what happened there, it's fine, is what it is. So at this point, I'm going to say server pusher. And I don't care about it being in a wait, right? So it doesn't, in this case, I'll show you why. So this is trigger, and then we go, so you go trigger. And you see it's a promise as well. You could await it, but I don't want to hold up my server for that reason, right? So this is the one that I care about, because obviously I need that to come back. But here, I actually don't mind too much. I don't need to block for it, right? So in this case, I'm going to push to the messages channel. I'm going to push an event called new message, and that's what we're going to eventually subscribe to. Like if this happens, do that. And then I'm going to pass the contents of called new message. Okay. So what this will do is it means that notice I'm using the server pusher that we created just a second ago. So now when I type in here, what we should see is a message, right? So I'm going to go ahead, refresh. I'm going to go here. I'm going to say, hello world, hashtag pusher. Right, hits enter. Now you can see hello world pusher, and then what will happen is if we go over here, boom, did we have it? There we go, API message, right? So at this point now I've got API message which comes in. I click it, and you can see hello world pusher came in. We've got my username, profile picture, the email, and the ID. Right, so this message now, I can subscribe to this topic on all of the clients, and I can update it in a real-time fashion. Okay, so this is really cool, right? So in this case, I can go now to the following. I'm going to go to my message list. Okay, so message list, and what I can do here is I can use our good old use effects. And if you are stuck on use effects, there's a video right around the screen right now where you can go ahead and watch, where I teach you all about how to do the use effect hook. Okay, so that should help you out. So Jay, that's a cue to add that in. Right, so at this point we've got a use effect, right? Really good stuff. We've got a use effect. I'm going to go ahead and pop it in like so. So this is just a dependency array right there. This will run when the component mounts. Okay, so we import it from React. And what I'm doing here is firstly, I need access to my client pusher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a variable called const channel equals client pusher. So I'm going to import my client pusher, and I say subscribe to the messages channel. Okay, now what we can do is, just like in the example that we had previously, we can say channel.bind, and what we do is we basically listen out for a message. So remember, we pushed a new message event. Now when that came through, once that comes through, what I can do is I can have an asynchronous callback function. And inside of that asynchronous callback, they give me the data. Now, what I can do here is I can say that data I already know is in a message format. So once we get that data for every single time that it pushes in, I can now go ahead and say we can do our mutation. Okay, so what I can now do is basically I can have our fetcher function which fetches all the messages again. That's basically what we want to do, because we want to make sure that we get all of the new messages. Imagine 15 people sent a new message. You want to make sure you get everyone's message. But on the client, what we should do at the bare minimum straight away is optimistically push that data in. Okay, you could also eradicate that and just make sure that it just, as it comes in, you're only adding in that last one. That's also an option as well, but I'll show you how we do it. Okay, so we say mutate. And notice how I've got API get messages, so I'm already attached to it. So mutate, so we're mutating that bit of the cache. I pass in my fetcher function. So this will basically go ahead and remember, it will fetch all the new messages again. And then what I can do is I can pass in my options and I can say optimistic update. And this optimistic update is basically going to pop in the data that came back and then all the new messages as well. Okay. And then we can do rollback on error true. Okay. So what this is going to do now is it will go ahead, pop this in. Right? So as it comes in, it will pop it in, and then we will also make a fetch call. Now I'll show you what you can do if you don't want to have those unnecessarily large fetch calls, because you might just be wondering, well, you're doing the optimistic bit, which can't you just do that here? Well, you could also do that there. Depends on your architecture, how you want to do it. Okay. So at this point as well, what if I sent the message, right? So imagine if I wrote hello world, it's gonna subscribe, then I'm already subscribed, so I'm gonna get another one inside of here. So if we don't address this, this is the behavior. Okay, so let's just double check what happens now. Right, so if I go to two browsers open, so localhost right here, and now if I go ahead and say hello world in caps, hello world, and now wait for it, we should see, oh, okay, we got messages is not iterable. Right, so at this point we better debug. Okay, so I like this bit. This is where it gets interesting. Okay, so we've got the messages come through here. Now, what we want to check is, really, we should see if the messages weren't available, we should have called the fetcher in the first place. Otherwise, we can do an optimistic update, right? But let's see what happens. So what I would do here is I would console log. Oh, okay, I know why. Silly mistake. And I even told you to watch my video on it. The use effect. Our use effect needs to have dependencies, and I'm using a lot here. So this use effect is dependent on the messages. It's dependent on the mutate function. It's dependent on the client pusher. That was my bad. Yeah, I should watch my use effect video. Okay, so there you go. Right, so we have it right here, looking pretty solid, and we have the viewership is crazy today, literally about to smash through 1,000 likes. Absolutely incredible, right? So now we do that, we hit save, and that is why we were getting that error, right? So localhost, Papichi says, I know, right? It's crazy. So in this case, I'll say, yo, what is up? Now pay attention, when I hit enter, it will come up here like we expect, but here it will say, yo, what is up? Yo, what is up? And then it will fetch and then it will get rid of it. All right, so we don't want to have that to happen. So hit enter, it'll say, yo, what is up? And then, firstly, we got another issue. So it did work. And then, okay, so we'll figure this one out. So let's debug. So console log messages. Well, we can do a few different approaches to this, right? We can actually firstly say if there's no messages, should you mutate and so forth. But I kind of want to see what the state of messages is here. So here, what I would say is messages, and then do this, and let's just inspect the messages as and when it comes in. So let's go ahead and give that a try. So let's inspect, and let's just type in yo pub fam, enter. And in this case, it would have come in, and you can see now we've got messages come through, and at some point it was undefined, right? Which means that, okay, so it was two children with the same key was the first issue, but at some point it was undefined, right? So what we could do here is we can actually prevent this issue. I did actually address this in a coaching call, but we can make it so you can say if there are no messages, then what you can do is you can do a mutate whereby you are simply doing a fetcher call. Okay. Otherwise, if you have messages, you can do a optimistic update. Okay. So in this case, now what it will do is if there are no messages, then you can actually make sure that you actually have this already. Right. So this will actually now ensure this should fix our issue. Right. If not, that's fine. We carry on debugging. That's coding. Right? This is where I hope you find value in these videos. So let's go ahead and refresh. And let's see what's up with my server. Module not found, can't resolve encoding. Oh yeah, you might get this error as well, by the way. So can't resolve encoding. When you get that, I want you to just go ahead and do yarn add encoding. So yarn add encoding. There is a slight bug where they're not installing a dependency that it's relying on. So there you go. There you go. So nice. So we say hello world, enter. So at this point now, you will see it would have waited for the new one to come in. And then we've got this. So hello world popped in. Let's try and see if this works. So hello localhost 3000. And then I'm going to go ahead and say ABC. And let's see. Okay, nice. All right. But there's a slight glitch. Ah, there you are. Yeah, ABC. All right. So how do we stop this from happening? Hello world. And then you see what happened. It fetched in and then it happens. This weird glitch is happening because what's actually going on here is it's updating your own message. And then when it comes in finally, it's actually going ahead and fixing it. So when the fetcher came in, that's when it actually fixed it. So what we can do here is we can fix this problem by saying if, and we can basically check to see if the message is from us, right? So if the ID of the message is already in our messages that were inside of our local cache, then we can say, don't do anything. You don't need to update because you're the one who basically pushed it. So if messages.find, and again, we're going to say if messages.find, and we could actually just protect ourselves here by saying if no messages return. But in this case, we could do, if messages find, we're going to go ahead and say if the message ID, right, is equal to the data ID. So if you're basically the person who sent that message, so it would already be in your stack if you already did because we optimistically updated, then you would have, then we just say return. Don't do anything at that point, right? So this is basically saying if you sent the message, no need to update your state, update cache, right? So it's all good. So let's see now, right? And then that will actually stop this issue from happening as well. Okay, so hit refresh, open up this side, hit localhost, and now let's see ourselves. So let's pay attention to the top over here, and we say join 0 to full stack hero, and then hit enter. All right, join 0 to full stack hero, and then this one found the message, and bam, there we go. There should be an option to do not broadcast to sender. I know, I agree. Lewis says priceless value and real coding experience was thinking that nothing ever goes wrong. Thanks for being real. Dude, I'm glad you like that part of it because that's the stressful bit, to be honest, as a streamer. But that's where you find the most value. So it helps by me putting it out there to help you out with that. So amazing stuff, right? So that's the logical statement you're looking for, right? So in this case, if I type in hello 1 2 3, enter. Watch, it came through here and then bam, it came through there. So pretty cool, right? Very cool. And it doesn't matter if there's like 50,000 of these open. So let's go ahead and check it out. Let's pop this one open. Let's pop this one. Wow. Okay. That's why it's being a bit slow. So let's go ahead and do this. So I've got 3 of these open right now. Refresh all of them, right? Let's see. So it could be like, loads of clients are signed up with it. And I'm going to fix this loading state as well. So I'll show you how we do that. All right. So we're going to server side render that as well. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's go Papa Farm and hit enter. And bam, just like that. And I go over here, type in 1 2 3, bam, it pops over there. Type 4 5 6, bam. All right, sick, nice. All right, Mahfouz, you can change the ordering of the chat however you want. That's completely up to you. All right, so we've got the real-time aspect down. That is cool, right? And we're literally about to smash through the 500 mark. That is absolutely amazing. So at this point now, we need to go ahead and actually incorporate the oh yeah, and also that's not done, by the way. I want to make sure it's an important point to mention here. We have a connection that is occurring here. Do not leave that connection open. So in a use effect, you should have something called a cleanup operation, right? Inside of that cleanup operation, we are going to unbind from everything. So unbind from listening to any messages and unsubscribe from the messages. That is important. Otherwise, you've got these listeners that just sit around until they die, right? So that's important. Okay, so next up, what we're going to do is we're going to server-side render the messages, and then I'm going to show you how to do authentication. And once we've done that, golden, all right? So let's go ahead and do it. We're doing really well on time. right? Because the authentication bit's a bit of a headache because we've got Facebook to deal with, right? So at this point, and remember, if you are enjoying the content and you want to see more of this, we have got a deal going on at Zero to Full Stack Hero right now. Feel free, papareactor.com/course. If you want to jump into coaching calls where we do a lot of this stuff, first link in the description. I've already taught a lot of this in the community, literally 2 days ago, right? I was just showing all of this. So you'll get first head sight into that. Okay, so at this point, what I'm now going to do is server-side render using the new Next.js 13 components. So heading over to page.tsx, then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a nice little fetch now. So what we can do is I'm going to go into our home page over here, and I'm going to do the following. So at the homepage level, because we are using server components now, I can make this an asynchronous function, and I can actually go ahead and make a call to our what's it called? Our backend over here, very simply, right? I can actually just make a fetch, and then I can actually, it's very easy to do this now. So I'll show you how we do it basically. So I'm going to say const data equals await, right? Fetch, and then I'm going to say inside of here I want to make a fetch call. Now because we're on the server, we can't do, because right now we're technically on a server, right? We can't do relative URLs, so you have to do some clever stuff here. We need to have a environment variable, so I'm going to have process.m.vercel URL, and the reason why I'm using Vercel URL is because, so first I'm going to carry that out. I'll show you right now. Yeah, so let's go ahead and have the rest of this done for us. Let's get rid of that. And this one, we're going to get rid of this. There we go. And then that. And then golden. Yeah. So we've got API get messages and then res.json. So what this is effectively doing is it makes a call to our get messages and it gives it to us, right? 500 likes, bam, we smashed it. Let's keep going. Amazing stuff, right? Vercel URL is important because this automatically gets populated with your Vercel deployment URL, which a lot of you have been asking me for ages. Even I was wondering, I was like, how the hell do you get that URL? That is how you do it, right? So it's a really nice little thing that you should know about. It's called system variables, right? So I spent way too long figuring that out. Like no joke, I spent like 6 hours figuring out that one thing. You're welcome, right? So Vercel URL, and then I found a forum. I was like, oh wow, okay, cool. So at this point now, if I was to go ahead, I need to add in a Vercel URL. So first things first, I'm going to go into my environment variables, and I'm going to do that. But I'm not going to show you my environment variables, right? I'll show you an example afterwards because I've got my Redis URL in there. So here, all I'm typing in is localhost 3000. Okay, so I'll show you what I typed in. I've saved it. I've added this into my environment variable. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you something in a nice way. So, okay, so I'm going to just delete my Redis URL for a second, right? I'm going to delete this saying secret. There we go. So I'll show you this. So you should be able to see this now. So I've got my secret and then my Vercel URL. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, save it, undo that obviously, and then I'll go back into my code. So save, close my environment variable, and now I've got that populated, right? So hit save, and now I'm going to go ahead and do my refresh. So I know that the new update should actually do it for us, but I don't care. I'm going to do it yarn one. Okay, and then let's do this, and we have a fetch failed at this point. So localhost refused to connect. Okay, so interesting. It's failing here, Vercel URL, and that's because we aren't. Oh, okay, I made a big mistake. It should have been HTTP localhost 3000. Sorry, so I'm going to change that right now. Don't do what I just did. Silly mistake. I'll show you the exact thing right now. So secret. Let's go ahead and put this in. That was a silly mistake, right? So, bam. Here you are. Save your file. And then I'm going to undo my secret thing and then pop that in. So save your file. You should have that. Otherwise, of course, it has nowhere to connect to. And then I'm going to restart my server. And then let's hit the refresh button and we should be able to make a request to our backend. So this is now server-side rendering. So what it's doing is before the page renders, it's actually loading that over here. So if I do console log data, we should see that inside of here now. So if I go ahead and do this, a refresh, it's loading the data beforehand on the server. Really cool, right? So this is the power of server-side rendering, and we're going to do this in a very clever way. So I'm going to make it happen so it happens on both the server and the client. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to server-side render on the server first, so it's immediately available when you get to the client. Then I'm going to do it in the background and swap, so that way you get their live data. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So first things first, I'm going to go to my messages. So I'm going to make this a const and say hide this. I'm going to say const messages. So const messages, and I'm going to cast it to a message type. So message array, and we're going to access our messages like so, right? I'm going to go ahead and pop this in like so. And so we've got the messages, hit save. And now inside of my messages, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pass down my messages as a prop, right? And I'll show you how we're going to do this, because it's going to be a delicate one. So for the message list, I'm going to say initial messages equals messages. Okay, and then what we're going to do is I need to obviously add this in, right? So I'm going to go into my message list. I need to give in my props, which are going to be the messages, and then I'm going to pass in the prop types. And now for that, we're obviously going to go ahead and say type props equals our messages as type message. Okay, so duplicate identifier messages. Oh, okay, this is going to be initial messages. Sorry, not messages. It's going to be initial messages. So this one is going to be initial messages. So I'm just going to grab that right now and just paste it over, save some time. There we go. Right. So in this case, now you can see initial messages gets fed through, comes through as a prop, and then we have access to our messages. Now what I can do, which is really cool, is I can go over to my JSX and I can go ahead and say the following, which is kind of a nice little neat trick. If you didn't know this before, now you know it, right? So when we have our messages, I'm actually going to do the following, right? I'm going to say, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say pop in this, and I'm going to say, so load the messages that we have on the client. Otherwise, show initial messages. Okay. So otherwise show the initial messages, right? So somebody says you should use Vercel, localhost, or localhost. Yeah, I should. You can definitely do that as well, right? I definitely will actually try that one out. So we've got messages, initial messages, all right, like so. Okay, so at this point now, oh, that's actually a good point. You know, he's got a point. So here we could actually have said this or localhost. Okay, so you can definitely do that as well, right? So you say Vercel URL or the HTTP, there we go, localhost 3000. So you could do that and then not set your environment variable. It'll save you an environment variable, a bit of headache. So that's actually kind of a cool way of doing it as well. So thank you for that. Yeah, right. So at this point, we're going to pass in the message list. I don't know, I didn't think of that. Right. So there you go. We've got the initial. So let's see what happens now. Okay. So when I refresh now, we should see that it's immediately available. Okay, it's going to take a second to load, and let's actually do it in a new window so you can see it for real. All right, so there's not going to be this thing where it pops in now. It's just going to be immediately there. See that? And then it actually swapped in front of us without us realizing. So it would have actually loaded it on the client as well and then just swapped it out. But because it's got the same keys, it didn't need to re-render it. So there you go. Look at that, server-side rendering. But in that loading state, how the hell do I handle the loading state now? So it's so easy in Next.js 12 because we have a blocking condition, right? Because inside of our page, so at the top level, inside of our home page, this is a blocking condition, right? This is a promise, we're waiting for it, and it's either going to be fulfilled or it's going to be an error. So in this case, what I can do is I can add in a loading.tsx. You can also do error, but you can feel free to check out my tutorial on Next.js 13 for that. The link will be somewhere around the screen right now, RFCE. And what we can do is we can type in loading. And at this point, I could just simply put loading or loading messages, ... Okay. And now when I hit refresh, during that rendering period, it will actually have the following. So let's go ahead and do a localhost fresh render. Let me do a fresh render actually with, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. It has to be lowercase l. That was a big mistake. Lowercase l. Okay, that actually makes a difference. There we go. Yeah, so remember, reserved keywords. Don't mess it up, okay? So now we come back over here. And now you can see if I refresh, while it's server-side rendering, it literally actually pops this in. So what's really powerful that I really want everyone to understand here is that prevents us from blocking, right? So it's able to get the user to interact with the page quicker, right? So that way they're seeing a loader, and then what it's doing is, oh, sorry, I overdid it there. And then it's streaming in the data as it's available. So it streams it in. So basically, it delivered the header and footer straight away. Then it streamed in the rest. So that's the power of server components with streaming, right? So that's part of Next.js 13's new arsenal. So let's make this loading page look a bit better. So what I've actually done here is I've used something from a website called Flowbyte. So head over to flowbyte.com, this website right here, right? So https flowbyte.com docs components /spinner. And here you've got these really nice spinners, right? That are basically purely written on Tailwind. The reason why that's important is because this is a server-side component, which means that it's rendered on the server beforehand. So I don't want to use any kind of heavy dependencies, but we do have access to our Tailwind because Tailwind gets compiled at build time, right? So at this point now, what I can do is I can actually go ahead, and I've already got one here. And the one I used was, I believe it was the large middle one. So it was this one, right? So it was this one right here, I believe. Yeah, so it was that one. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go into my code and I'm going to pop it in right there. Bam. Right. And then you can see where they've got class. I'm just going to go ahead and change that to class name. Right. And then hit save. Now that is freaking out because we haven't got a parentheses around it all. So wrap it in the parentheses and oh, that's because of that. Oops. Yeah. And oh God. Okay. I messed that up bad. Right. And here as well. Class name. Hit save, bam. Okay, so then we've got a good situation. So at this point you can see everything there. So let's see now what we should have on the screen. So now we've got a nice little loader. So I'm going to do a few little minor tweaks, and you can feel free to change it up as much as you want. So in this case, I've got a difference here where we've got text blue. So for the surrounding, where we had fill blue, dark, I'm on dark mode a lot of the time. So in that case, I've got dark text gray, but I'm just going to make it, in this case, just I'm going to get rid of my dark mode, right? So I use everything in dark mode. So that's why right now you can see it's in dark, but you can see now it's light. Okay, easy as. Then I'm going to go ahead and say padding on the top should be 8. And then I'm also going to go ahead and pop in a message in the form of a p tag above the status, right? So in this case, so we've got loading your messages, and that's going to have animate posts, right? And again, everything's centered by default. So loading your messages pops in. Nice. That's pretty cool, right? In this case, let's just say loading messenger. That's kind of nicer. Loading messenger. Okay. There we go. And then what we can do is we can change the width and height. So a very simple change here. We can double the size by simply going here and changing it to 16. And because it's all Tailwind, this can get rendered on the server without any unnecessary extra dependency, which is really clean, right? So just like that, boom. And then when it's ready, pow, server-side render with streaming. So we've got we got the server-side render loading component, which is directly available. And then when it's available, when it's done rendering on the server, it streams in the rest. But what's really awesome is you see the rest of the JavaScript got delivered straight away. So really cool, right? You could even probably do your chat input as well, but again, yeah, it's up to you, right? So that looks pretty damn nice. And say sup, and bam, okay. So, okay, this is cool. So we've got our loading state done. Now we've got the final piece of the puzzle, which is the session, right? The session, the authentication, how to log in with Facebook, right? So quick little water break, and then we're going to go power through the final bit, which is our Facebook authentication. If you're enjoying the stream right now, simply hit that thumbs up. That is it. And subscribe if you haven't already. Okay. Colombia in the house. What's up, Juan? Juan, that's it, right, Juan? Wait for him. Okay. Let's go ahead and kill it. All right, final stretch. Nice. So at this point, we are now gonna go ahead and implement NextAuth authentication. Now, this is where I'm not gonna lie to you. There are gonna be bugs that you're gonna come up because we're using a combination of Next.js 13 and NextAuth, and the documentation is still relatively new. Okay, so don't worry. It can be frustrating, but it's completely, just take your time and just debug it. Use the Discord community, the Next.js Discord community, the Zero to Full Stack Hero Papa Fam community, all this good stuff to help you out. First things first, we're gonna go ahead and head over to NextAuth authentication, right? So let's head over to NextAuth, and then we're gonna go into our NextAuth right here. Now, if we go here, click on get started. This is a really good provider that a lot of people use for their authentication when they're handling Next.js stuff. So at this point, I can do over here, yarn add NextAuth. That will go ahead and install that. Now we can go ahead and add in the following route. So this is still going to be inside of pages API auth Next.js, NextAuth.js, right? So you can see right here, we have all of this, this exact folder structure. This is important, right? So this is something that it relies on in order to operate, right? So we're going to use this folder structure because it's accessing our API, which again, remember, even though it's Next.js 13, stays in this structure. So auth/NextAuth is our key here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and copy this part in particular, and I'll show you why. Okay, so let's go into our code. Let's go into our pages, and let's go into our API, and let's create a folder called auth, and inside of there a file called nextauth.ts. Nice. Okay, so at this point inside of NextAuth, what I like to do is just copy their example. Now this is all for GitHub. We're going to change that up very shortly. Okay, so in this case, we have a GitHub example. Now I'm going to show you how we can get the Facebook one. We simply change that to Facebook, and we change this to Facebook as well, right? So in that case, we now have our Facebook provider, and this is not going to be Facebook ID and Facebook. This is now, we have to change that to Facebook ID and Facebook secret. So I'm going to change this to Facebook client ID, Facebook client ID, and I'm going to change this one to Facebook client secret. Okay. And then we're going to ensure that they're there. We're going to promise that they're there, right? That's fine for now. Okay. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to actually go ahead and override the default sign-in page. So I'm going to say that we're going to create our own sign-in page. So in this case, I'm inside of the provider, so we need to come out of here. And I'm going to pass in the pages, right? And I'm going to say this, our sign-in page is going to belong at /auth/sign-in. So I'm going to create my own sign-in page, and we're going to server-side render it, make it work, and that's going to be cool. And then we're going to have a secret. Okay, so in this case, you have to have a Next.js or NextAuth secret. So in this case, I'm going to pass in a NextAuth secret as well. So process.env.nextauth, and you can actually go ahead and you can just pass that in, I think by default, and it works as well. But I can't remember, so I'm just going to put it in here for now as well, right? But the secret as well. Okay. So we have this set up. So I need two things. I need my Facebook client ID, my Facebook client secret. I need my NextAuth secret to be set. And then we need to create the sign-in page and do the magic that happens there, right? So let's go ahead and do that right now. So first things first, we need to create a Facebook app. So in this case, we go to Meta Developer App, right? So in this case, Meta Developer App, let's go to Meta for Developers. developers.facebook.com, and we're going to go ahead and create an app. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So you see where it says create an app, we're going to do that. And now you've got all of this stuff here, right? So you've got welcome to Facebook for developers, we're going to go ahead and do Facebook developer account, and then we're going to go to this, start the registration process. Alternatively, you can go to here and click get started. Let's do that. Where is get started? Where is this link? I've got a link that I always use. Let's default my apps. There we go. Okay, so I've already got two apps that I've already set up, but I'm going to show you one right now. We're going to click create new. We're going to go ahead and do a simple, oh God, I can't remember this. What did I do? I think I did consumer, right? And then we're going to have next and add an app name. So in this case, I'm just going to say Upstash. Meta Messenger, right? Contact email, fine. In this case, we could do me create app. Okay, sorry, oops, Meta's not allowed. Oh, okay, I didn't mean that. This is for educational purposes, right? We're gonna say Upstash Messenger, right? And then I'm gonna pop in my password, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and pull in my password right now, and then it's gonna create the app. Okay, so this is now going ahead and creating, and now I've come onto this following page. Okay, so now what I need is a Facebook login. So what you want to do is click on setup. Okay, and you can see here we're in the development mode, right? We're going to click on www.site URL. So for this one, obviously it's a bit tricky to really tell it where we're at, right? So what I'm just going to do for now, just write example.com. As in, if you have a URL, sunnysanger.com, whatever you want to do, I'm just going to put this in just so I can get past this step right now. Okay, so I'm going to push this through right now, and then here we've got the app ID and a bunch of other stuff. Let's just click next. Let's click next. This is fine. I'm not going to use their stuff right now. Next. and let's click on, okay, cool. So I now need to go to my settings, right? So I click on settings, I'm gonna let it load. I just don't wanna expose any secrets right now. Okay, so once that's done, yeah, that's good, right? Once that's done, now what we can do is we can go ahead and get our details. So if I go to settings and I go to basic, once again on here where it says basic, here I will have the following. So they have hidden it, which is good. I've got my app ID. So this is going to be my client secret. Okay, so I'm going to write a string right now that we're going to eventually use. So imagine right here, I've got my Facebook client secret. So I've got, sorry, this is my client ID. Right, so eventually I will have something like this in my environment file. So client ID equals this, and then I'm going to have a secret equals, and then here I'm going to copy this, right? So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to click show, save this, right? And then I'm going to basically have my like ABC secret here, right? Then I'm going to take these and I'm going to put them in my environment variable file. Okay, so that's what you're going to need to do as well. So I'm going to talk you through it as I hide the screen. Okay, so in this case, I've now gone back to Facebook. I've clicked show. I've got my long secret. I then go ahead and grab that variable, and I'm going to go ahead and take both of them to my environment file. I've now popped in those values into my environment file. Make sure that we haven't got those comment marks still there. And I've gone ahead and closed the environment file. Right. So at this point now, I'm going back. I'm going ahead and I'm just going to hide my environment secret again so you can't see it. Let's go ahead and hide it. Okay, cool. So now what I've done is I've populated my client ID and my client secret. And then what I do is I restart my server just to be sure that it's actually pulling in the new stuff. Okay, cool. So now I have that. And then the next thing I need to do is NextAuth secret. Okay, so this one I forgot to do. NextAuth secret, you just have a secret here. So you can pop in a secret value. It could be whatever you want, but in this case, you should use a hashed value. There's a nice little command on their website that will show you how to do it. So I'm going to pop in a value there and then put that into my environment variables as well. So I'm just doing that as well. So I'm going into my environment variables. I popped in a secret, super secret, and it's hidden away. And now we are back, right? So I'm gonna close my terminal, shut down my server, rerun it again. Okay, so we should be set up now, right? We have a connection to everything there right now, okay? So at this point, now we need to go ahead and set up the actual sign-in page. And there's a few other steps that we have to do, right? So it doesn't just work magically. It's very close to it, but it's kind of, we have to get it there first, right? So if we go to our app folder, right, and obviously we have to also, we're not done yet, we have to actually whitelist some certain redirect URIs. So heading back over to our Facebook login settings, and if Facebook ever do watch this video, it's all for educational purposes, everything that we're doing right now, okay? Not getting sued. Right, so in this case, a valid OAuth redirect URI, and plus we're helping developers. I mean, come on. Right, so this is where we're going to have a special URI that we're going to have to pop in here. Okay, now as we're in development mode, it should be fine that we don't have to pop it in there. Okay, but we should just try now. So in this case, I got error. Oof. Okay, now let's refresh. We should be fine. Localhost. Oh, sorry, that's because I'm over here. Wait, what is this? What is that? That's my actual app. Okay, I'm super confused. What's going on? Okay, anyway, going back, let's go ahead and connect our NextAuth now. So at this point, we need to go ahead. So you can see here that they're doing session providers. Now we're using Next.js 13, which means that we've got some more stuff to go ahead and do. In this case, you can see here, Next.js 13, we can use the await unstable get server session, right? So I'm going to actually show you how we can do this to server side render a value in. So at this point now, if I go over to and I will show you two approaches. I'll show you the way that we can first get it on the server, and then I'll show you how you can add middleware, which will prevent you from, the only problem is the deployment with the middleware is funky right now. There's a bug and it doesn't work. And that's not just me, that's a lot of devs online. So as remember, Next.js 13 is very new, right? The new structure is very new. So underneath app folder, we're gonna have a auth, and this is gonna be, oops, no, not that auth. This is going to resemble / sign in, right? So we're going to have an auth. Then we're going to have another folder inside it called sign in. So that's going to go / auth / sign in. And then we're going to have page.tsx. So make sure your page is actually in the sign in. I know it can be confusing because you think that that's also there, but I'm in the sign in folder right now. So that folder, not that one, that folder. Okay. So RFCE. This is going to be my sign in page. Okay. So this is going to be the sign in page that we're essentially sending Next.js over to NextAuth over to. So what we want to do here now is actually have NextAuth pull in the special things that we need. So what I need to do is use the get providers pattern. Okay. So what I want to do is firstly, I need to actually get the Facebook login. So right now we've got one provider here, which is the NextAuth provider. So in this case, I need to get these providers. So first thing we need to do is go over here and simply pop in get providers. So what I can now do is make this asynchronous. And here I can say const providers equals await get providers. And this is not, doesn't need to be unwrapped. Const providers equals await get providers. Okay. And then what we can do is I need to pass that down because this is a server rendered component, right? Then we're going to have a signing component, which is going to be a client side component, right? So this is firstly going to have two things. It's going to have a div with a picture inside of it. And that picture is going to be resemblant of basically a meta logo. Okay. So it's going to be a meta logo, and that logo I'm just going to pop in right now to make life easier. We don't need the signing component there. That's easy. So for this bit, I'm going to just pop in a bunch of styling so you can see, there we go. Links to a image that we have of the meta logo. And then we've got a signing component underneath that, right? So here I'm going to have a sign in component. And this one, I'm going to pass in the providers as a prop. Okay. So if you guessed it, I passed in the providers as a prop. So I need to create this component, of course, right? So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and create a signing component.tsx. This is going to be the signing component. This one is going to be a client-side component. So this is going to be a use client component. So over here now, what we can do is I can actually go ahead and have, and someone says 13 is good. I know, man, it's sick, right? So at this point, I can actually have the providers pull in from here. Now, the problem is we don't have all the correct prop types, and I'm not going to spend too long right now trying to find all the prop types. But what you could do is you could get the return type from here. So in this case, record, letter onion. You could do all of this, right? And there is a way to do this actually. I might try and do it right now. I might try and do it live on stream. I haven't prepped that one, right? So I'm going to show you right now if I can do this. So the way you would do that, I believe, is you would have your function here, and then we could do this, I think. So I'm going to do type props, oops, equals this. And then if you don't know the prop type for this, you can actually use a special trick. So you can do providers. So let's have a look at this right now. So you got a promise that comes back. So you have to do awaited. And then we've got this type. Okay. So let's try that out. Let's do promise is a awaited type. So awaited, and it's going to be the return type. It's all handy like Next.js wizardry. And then what we can do is we can say type of, and then we can pass in the get providers function. Okay, I know, crazy stuff, right? And that's how you get the actual return type of something, right? So that's a really nice kind of trick if you didn't know how to do that, right? So that's how you do it. That's how you get basically the providers. Now, if I was to look into the providers, you can see we've actually got all the different providers like Facebook, so forth. So pretty damn powerful trick, right? It's a really, really good trick. So at this point now on my sign in page, I'm going to have so you can see this is actually like a kind of, it's a key value pairing, right? So if I did providers dot, you see I've got all these different keys for different things. So I need to map through all of the keys in order to get something. So now what I can do is I can do something clever here, and I can say, well, I think it's clever. I can actually have object dot values, and I'm going to map through all the providers. And what this will do is it will give me the key mapping pairs. So map through the providers, provider, yep. And then we can pass in the provider like so. So I can pass in the provider name as our key. And then I'm going to pass in the following. I'm just going to save a bit of time here and pop in my snippet of code, and I'll show you exactly what is going on. So we've got the button. We've got a sign in with provider name, and then we close off my div. Okay. Now you can see object values is here. It's complaining, and that's because of my type definition. So this is where it can get a bit messy, where it's not assignable and so forth. Type no is not assignable, so we could do, yeah, we'll just say it's there, right? I'm gonna prove it's there, right? So at this point, we should have on our /sign-in page, once we pull in our sign-in component, we should have access to it. So in order to double check this, I can go /auth/sign-in, and let's see. Sign in with Facebook. Whoa, hey! So it popped in our Facebook, right? That's correct. And the reason why I'm telling you that worked is because I never wrote sign in with Facebook. It pulled that from our NextAuth configuration, and our types worked. That's pretty cool, right? Did that live on stream. Okay, so I mean the whole thing's live, but you know. So at this point, we are going to pull in our helpful sign in helper function. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in a helpful sign-in function. I don't need the sign out. That can go away. And now what I want to do is I'm going to say on click of this, I want to do a arrow function. I'm going to say sign in with the provider ID. Okay. And you can pass in a callback URL. So just FYI, you can pass in where do you want to go back to, right? So in this case, what we could do is we could do like Vercel, you know, so in that, remember what we did earlier? So we could have something along the lines of something like it could be process.env.vercel. Oops, Vercel. Come on, Vercel. Oh my God, Vercel. There you go. URL or this. Okay, we could do that. So if we have the Vercel URL, then I want to do that. But in fact, I'm just going to be even more cautious of this and just to be fair, we could do that. We could say either do that or go to the /home page. Okay, so quite a handy little callback URL tip. So let's give this a try, and this will probably not work because it will most likely say you haven't got a redirect URL authorization. So let's click it. It will take me to Facebook. Okay, it did. And then it says Upstash is submit for review. Okay, I need to do that. Obviously, some have not been approved for you. So you have to obviously approve, like ask for review when you do that whole app approval process inside of your Facebook. I'm not going to go into that, but here you go, get advanced access and stuff like that. You got to do, there's a review, app review. There you go. Right, you got to do that. Continue as Sunny. So now it's trying to log in using my data. I click continue. That's because I'm logged in on Facebook. If you weren't logged in, it'll have your email and password. And just like that, bam, we are logged in. So if now, I believe I am logged in. Yeah, so we can check if we're logged in, right? So that actually worked, right? So that's perfect. And it went back to my HTTP localhost home, which is great, right? So this is good. So sign in with this name, good stuff. Let's go up to, now let's go ahead and pull the session itself. And obviously I'll style out the login page. So let's go to 3,000. Let's just firstly finish off that styling because that looks like crap, right? Auth sign in. So here, this looks horrible. So I want to sign this, start this up. So first things first, let me add that button, you know, that Facebook button fill, which is here. We got the blue background, similar to what we did before, right? And then for the overall div, I'm simply going to just say flex and justify in the center. Justify center. So very simple, you know, button right here. But obviously, oh God, that's horrible. Okay, that's not what I wanted. My provider, my object values, I'm going through them all. Flex, justify, center. Okay. And then my, oh, okay, I see why. Silly me. This page, right? I need to do my sign up page. So over here, and also you see it's meta messenger. I'll show you how using those reserved keywords that we talked about before, you can do head.tsx, RFCE, pop in your head component. And then here you can just pop in the title and say sign in to Messenger. If I can spell, that'll help. Sign into Messenger and then refresh. Bam, sign into Messenger. Yeah, nice. We need to center it because that looks horrible. That looks like it's got problems. All right, so let's go ahead and let's pull and pop it in and say that this one is going to be grid and justify center, right? So there you go, nice. Okay, so it centers it up and then I can sign into Facebook and I'm already signed in, which means it will ping me straight back to that. Now it's worth knowing that until you've deployed it, you can't actually use someone else's account. So you can get test user accounts over here. So test users, you can go ahead and do that. But if you try and use someone else's actual account, it will say, whoa, your app's not active yet, right? So you have to make sure that you're just doing that. That's why when I was testing it, I was testing it with some dummy data. Okay, so next up, now we need to go ahead and get the session. So for session, what I'm doing is I'm going to show you a few different approaches. Now in a client-side component, sure, you can wrap your app in something like a provider. So if you were going to do the provider approach, you can do the following pattern, okay? I'm going to kind of jump through this one pretty quick because I don't want to spend too long on this. But if you want to do the provider pattern, you can do the following. You can make a providers.tsx. And then, because I know a lot of people are naturally going to have this question, you can make your session provider like so, just how you would do it. And this could have all your providers. It could have Redux. It could have everything that, all that you would typically wrap in app_tsx, right? underscore app.tsx. But if you want to, and then if you want to use it, you simply go into your layout, right? And you would pop it into around your children like this. So you would pop in your providers like this, right? So that's how you would do the provider pattern. And then if you were to refresh, you see how it still works, right? So that is how you can then go ahead. So we could leave it like that, to be fair. And you can now use your React hooks in the children below this, right? So this is actually allowing it to work in the way we expected it. Actually, no, sorry. I take that back. Not in the layout. You don't want it in the layout. We're not going to do it here. I'm going to do it. You could do it there. And then you could have your... Okay, so you could do it there. I'll show you why, right? You can do it there. And then you can have your session. So we obviously need the first instance of the session. So you can use unstable get server session, right? So obviously this is asynchronous. And this is from NextAuth, right? So this right here is from NextAuth. And what this is doing is it gets the server from the, and remember it says unstable. So a lot of this stuff right now is beta, it's unstable. So just be cautious when you're using it, okay? Now for the providers, inside of here, session provider naturally requires a session, right? So what we could do is we could upgrade this to include the session as well. Right? And this is any because we haven't prepped this out, but in this case, we pass through the session. And then at the layout level, you could go ahead and pass in your session. So that way what's happening is you're passing your session through here, and your children are rendered out. And this is now wrapping out as a client-side component. So something you can do, okay? Just worth knowing, that's how you would essentially do it, right? And now your entire app that's how you replace the underscore app.tsx approach that you used in Next.js 12. I hope that helped someone, right? Because that took a little second, right? So now you can use your hooks in underneath, right? But if you didn't want to use your hooks, and what happens if you want to pass it down and you want to have like instant reactions? Well, then you can do that as well by just prop drilling it down. So inside here, you can also get access to the session, and then you can do the session equal. So you could basically do the same line of code, and you can prop drill it down as session, right? You could do that as well. It's completely up to you. But in this case, let's use the hook, right? Let's actually use the hooks underneath, and I'll show you the benefit of using it versus the benefit of not using it, right? So in this case, actually, I'll tell you what, we'll prop drill it. I'll show you why, right? Because when you server-side render it, I want you to have the immediate action. I don't want to have a second when it glitches in. I want to have it straight away that it's there, right? But I just showed you that previous approach. So if you want to use the hook, you can use that, okay? So at this point, unstable get server session. So now what we can do is we could pass this into, for example, the chat input. And then in chat input, for your props, you can go ahead and do the following. You can say props. And then here we can do type props equals. And for the session, again, I'm going to show you that nice little trick that we did previously, right? You pull in the actual function itself. And then what you can do is you can say session equals awaited, because what we're waiting for is a promise type. We're going to say I want to get the return type from the following function. So I want the type of the return function, which is unstable this. So now I've got the session return type for this. So if you look at it, it's a session or no, which is a return type of this. So return type is a promise, session no, we await it, so it unwraps it, and then we get it. So hopefully these are helping you out. These are pretty solid tips, right? I had no idea about this before. I'm not bigging myself up either. I'm just saying it's pretty cool. Okay, so at this point, for the button, we could disable it if there is, let's have a look what we've disabled based on. Let's actually disable the input, right? So the button is basically if there's no input, and we're going to disable the input if there is no session. So if the props are sessions, I'm going to unravel my session like so. I'm going to say if there's no session, let's go ahead and get the session out. And here we say disabled is no session. So now if I refresh, Suspension. Okay, let's just refresh. Okay, so this is what I got previously when I used the suspense at the higher level. So, okay, this is what I remember. Yeah, that's what I forgot about. So when I used it at this level, the page level, or when I used it at the layout level, this is the issue I experienced. So you could move this concept to the other level. So you can move this over to, that's why I forgot. I completely forgot. Right. So you could do this at the page level, not the layout level. So you could, in theory, go ahead and make this, wrap it with your providers. And now you can map this inside like so, and you can pass your session, the session like this, right? So you can do that and that should work. There you go. Okay. So that's how you fix that issue if you run into it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Try and keep your layout presentational logic only. I knew there was a reason. I couldn't remember what it was. Right. So in that case, that's the cleaner way to do it. Okay. So now we've got this happening. Let's see if I can type in. So in this case, I can type in because I'm logged in, right? But if I have the sign out button in the header, so let's go to my header component, and where we had the logout button, which was a client component, right? On here, what we wanted to do is we can now leverage the use of our sign out button. Okay. So on click sign out. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that. And let's click that button. Let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and click it. And I've now signed out. And you can see, look at that, guys. We have no session, which means I cannot type a message in. Amazing. That's really good, right? So let's go back to the header now. And we can go ahead and pass in the following. So for the header, we had the page component. And you can see where did I render the header out? The header. Okay, so inside of my header, we can actually get the session object as well using the previous approach. So inside of here, we can do using our get unstable approach. We can actually go ahead and pull the session from the client there. And it's using cookies to do that, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. We make our function asynchronous. And now you can see we've got the session object. And we should see if I save this file, it should say, welcome to Meta Messenger, sign in, loads the messenger up. And then wait for it. So this is now using a bunch of different combination of things, right? So really nicely coming together. And obviously my internet's a bit slow when I'm streaming, so there could be a hiccup because of that. Let's go ahead and do a fresh refresh to localhost 3000. There you go. So it's just a bit of a delay. Whenever I'm live, I seem to get that. It's fine, right? So now if I click sign in, it will take me to my sign in page. But if I go back here, you can see I just can't type in, but I can see all the messages. But now let's do the same concept with our message list component. So the actual message itself, let's go ahead and go to our message. So the message component, where is it? Over here. Now notice how this is a in the message component, we could actually go ahead and use a server-side rendered aspect of it. So message component, let me go ahead and grab. So here, what we could do is we could prop drill it in from above, right? And I'll show you the two approaches to this. So first things first, let's use the session itself, right? So when we get a session, it's actually coming back as data, and we rename it as a session from the use session hook. Okay, so this actually comes from our NextAuth React. So it's not from this, it's from NextAuth React, and it's from here, use session. Okay, so if we do it this way, this will happen on the client, right? Now this can work, sure, but there's a problem with this where if I was to now go ahead and do our logic based on the session, which sure I can do, I can go here and I can say the user is user. Oh, thank you so much, Sadar. He goes, I want to create React Native edit. Can you make a video? Sure, maybe, possibly in the future, but thank you for the donation, right? So we're gonna hit save. Now you can see, if I refresh, we can see that initially there's a little, I mean, it would have been a potential flicker, right? So I'll be honest with you, there's going to be a little potential flicker, right? So even if I did the other way around. Okay, I mean, it's fine. We could probably live with this, right? So in this case, you could do it this way. You could use the client side part here. And notice how it doesn't say use client, right? Now, the reason why this is actually probably a client component, it is a client component, sorry, is because the parent that it's rendered in is use client, and then it renders out. So in that case, this by default is inherently rendered on the client as well, okay? So in that case now, if I did this and I signed in and I was to post a message, so firstly, let's go ahead and sign in. So let's go ahead and sign into Facebook. And I've already signed in, so it would sign me out. There we go, logged in as Sunny. So firstly, let's go to my header and make sure, oh, we got the pop-up anthem. Let's go ahead and actually pull from the values that we expect now. So logged in as session user image. Nice, right? So session user image, oh, sorry, not image. Oh my God, session.user.name. And then for the image here, rather than this one, we're going to change it to session user image. There we go. And then this is freaking out because we're saying that it may not exist. So in this case, there we go. And let's refresh. There we go. That's actually my Facebook picture. Sunny Sang is my Facebook name. And that's pretty cool. Okay. And now don't get it confused, right? This email address that we're going to check for in a second is different to my one. Okay. So this was test data. Right, remember we added in some test data. It's a different email address to my signed in email address. Okay, so now what I can do is I can go over to my chat input, and then where we add a message, I can get my session, right? So here I've got my session inside my chat input. So here we go. So here we can say session.user.name, and then we can just ensure that it's there. And obviously you can have a protective block saying if there's no session, return from the function and so forth. I'm just going to be lazy a bit today. We can say this, right? I'm just going to ensure that there is that, or you can have a fallback kind of placeholder image. You see, you can do different things, right? Danny, thank you so much because you're the best. I see you from Ecuador. I appreciate you, man. Thank you, Daniel Coder as well. Both Daniels in the house, right? Danny and Daniel, right? And then here you see papareact.team. So these are all from a guy with papareact.team. When my one is different, right? So my logged in email is different. So session.user.email. Okay. Now I'm going to ensure that that's there as well. So what we should really have here is a protective block saying if no session, return. If no session, return. So we should kind of block over here. So we could shorthand this into if no session or if no this. So there we go. Hey, our song is on. Victoria of Lagos. There we go. Yeah. And then we don't have to have these annoying things, right? There you go. Bam. Oh, we do. Okay. So, because this could not be there. But still, we should have a protective block there, right? We shouldn't allow them to send a message at that point. So, cool. Nice. So at this point, if I was to enter a message and type it in, we should be sending it as this one. So before I do that, I'm going to go to my message list and I'm going to make sure that our logic for rendering out the messages right now is, sorry, so for determining if we are a user or not. Oh, it's already there. Okay. So are you ready? Moment of truth. Okay. When I type this in, is it going to be blue? If it's blue, we've done it correct because now it's going to be pulling in my Facebook information and then I should be different to this person, which means I'm the sender. Okay, so moment of truth, guys, moment of truth. Everyone get ready for this because I have a feeling this could be something that error breaks on it, but let's get serious for a sec, right? So I'm going to go ahead and type in this subscribe, like and subscribe, and let's hit enter. Bam! And wait a sec, no, we're good, solid. Hey, this is sick. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted. That is solid. That's banger. I think that's perfect, right? That's absolutely, smash the thumbs up button, please, for that, right? So this is actually working the way we expected now. So this person is technically different to the test data that I put in, which is perfect. That means that if another user was to sign in, bam, it works as well. And our real-time functionality also works because if I type in hello world and do this, bam, hello world, and wait for it, we should have this syncing up in a second as well. There we go, hello world, because it's that client. And the reason why this is working across different clients is because, remember, even though you're signed in as the same person, your cache from one browser to that one is different. So it's going to know that it's not in your cache at the moment. So pusher comes in. Now, I want to show you a perfect example of this in a really nice way. So if we go to the chat input and we go to, message list, this is a really nice way of doing it. So At this point, you can go ahead and put in a console log, just ensuring that when it pushes, it's going to go ahead and tell you. So I'm going to show you how we can do this, right? So if we pop in a message like this, new message from pusher, push, and then remember, it won't push anything. It will stop here if it's the message that you sent. So I'm going to prove a point here. Okay, are you ready for this? So I'm going to open this up on this side, open this up on that side, refresh, and I'm going to go ahead and pop this open, and I'm going to go ahead and pop this open. Now ignore that because I'm doing it on two different things. That's why it's freaking out. All right. There we go. Come on, let's load. Okay, cool. So at this point now, if I start typing a message in here, yeah, and let's actually do it across 3. I'm going to really push the boundary here. All right, so let's go ahead and pop in another one, and then let's do this. All right, so again, it's because we're rendering it across. So there we go. Okay, so now if I type in hello world, what we should see is that this one will update its state using SWR, and this one, well, these two will get pings from pusher, in which case you'll see it in the thing, in the console. So bang, push, there you go. And then these ones will get pushes from push. There we go, nice. And if I do it from here, over here, this one will do it. And then you see how it's gonna push, and then this one will probably get it in a second. It's probably just delayed. So over here, oh no, it did get it. All right, so it's just oh no, sorry, it was, yeah, it did come. It's just not 2 because it's a different thing. So if I type in hello, right, this one should get it, and this one should get it. Bam, this is amazing, right? So if I type in 1 2 3, the messages 1 2 3 should appear here and here. So wait for it. So sometimes, obviously I'm live right now, so it's a bit slow. 4 5 6 7 8 9. There you go, it's a queue system. There you go, it came through. Right, and then there you can see it's also going to fly through as well. So absolutely amazing, right? It works. It's again, when I'm live, crazy stuff happens. That's why I can see this being a problem, right? But in this case, let me go ahead and close this up. Let me close this up, and let me go pop this in. But yeah, the point is, you can see that it does work, so it come through. Yeah. Will says, yo, Sonny, can there be some code along the line or playing with React Next? MITS seems to be somewhat limiting. Not sure. We can talk about that afterwards, though. Feeling when the code works and the way you want it is awesome. Yes, I know, absolutely crazy. So yeah, there we actually have it. So I believe we actually covered all the angles, because now we have our login state. Let me just double check in messages. We are showing, yeah, the message is being pulled from there. So that's actually pulling the person's name. Oh, we are with the timeout. That's it. So time ago, I wanted to make sure that we actually finished everything properly. So if we go to the message component, we need to install something called React Time Ago. Okay. So what I want you to do is, you can actually go ahead and check it out yourself, but I'm going to go ahead and install it right now. It's a nice little component library. And what you can do is, add React Time Ago. And we are going to pull it into our message component. And I will show you another little trick as well, right? I want to show you another little thing we can do afterwards. So remind me, middleware, if I forget, right? So I'm going to go to message component. So message component, like so. And then I'm going to pop it in React Time Ago. And here we need to install our type dependencies for our developer. So yarn add -d React Time Ago. That will install my type definitions. Now what I do is, it's very simple to use it. I just go down to my timestamp, and here what I can do is I can say time ago as a component, and I can pop it in. So I can say the date is a message. So let's just do date equals, and this is going to be message. So it's going to be new date, message dot created at. Okay, and then self-close component like that, right? And then we get rid of this one, and this is freaking out because we haven't got that. And there you go, right? So now what we should see, as soon as I hit save, let's see. Oh, there we go, bam, nice. That's so sick, right? So I say hello world, bam, hello world. 0 seconds ago, 1 second ago, 2 seconds ago. Oh, awesome, right? Clean, works. Right, in that case, now you've got relative timestamps. So really, really slick. Right, and this is all using Next.js 12, so other components, all that good stuff, right? So I'm also going to go ahead and show you just an example of middleware, right? So let's imagine you wanted to always redirect to the sign-in page, and you want to make sure that you can have a, users can't see this page. So if I was in a sign out, like for example, signed out now, it shouldn't be loading me here. It should throw me to the auth sign-in. Okay, so what if I want to enforce that through middleware? Well, I'm going to show you right now just how we can do it. Well, first I'm going to sign in, and then in order to create middleware in Next.js 13, go to the top level. So the level which is the sibling to app pages and that stuff, right? Not inside of pages, it's inside of the top level, right? And then we go ahead and we pop in the following. So, oh my God, I almost got into the wrong thing. We create a file called middleware.ts. Okay, do this middleware.ts. Now what's really cool is that middleware.ts can run on anything that we say it will run on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export something from NextAuth middleware. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the following. Now we need to ensure that it's actually matched onto a specific route. Okay, so how do we do that? Right, so in this case I need to go ahead and say so you can do something called a matcher, right? So in this case we can use matcher. Now if I do this, it means it will affect anything. It will affect the home page. Basically I'm saying protect it, right? Secure. So basically only run this middleware on the route that matches this, so the home page. Right, you can actually have different patterns and all sorts of cool stuff, but this is how you can have several like middlewares accordingly. So let's go ahead and hit save and refresh. This should kick in gear my middleware. So now I'm signed in, right? So let's see what happens now, because now my middleware will intercept the request to try and go to the home page and redirect me to my NextAuth sign-in page, which is created, and it knows what it is based on this page right here that we authorized earlier. So the minute I click sign out, I should not be able to access this page. Hit sign out, bam, I go straight there. It just threw me over there, and that wasn't anything else besides middleware, right? So now what we've done is I've gone ahead, and if I try to go to localhost / bam, can't, protected it. So now we are protected. The only issue is with the deployment of that, there's currently a little bug, but just so you know, that is how powerful that is, right? So just like that, we have an incredible protected route that is now gone ahead, and you can't do it unless you sign in. So if I sign in now, you'll see I now have a authenticated state. I can go ahead and do that. Amazing. Beautiful. Okay. And just like that, we have the build. Now, for deployment purposes, I'm actually going to do it in a separate video because we have a few additional things. Next.js 13 is in beta. We have NextAuth, which is new to working with Next.js 13. So there's a lot of quirks when it comes to the deployment process. So in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up here, and we're going to dive into exactly what was covered in this build. So I'm going to go ahead and put something else on, some music, and then we're going to wrap up and see what was built in today's video. So we just went ahead and built an incredibly powerful Meta Messenger clone. We used a bunch of different tech, right? So we used things like Next.js 13. We use Tailwind CSS. We use Upstash to go ahead and create our Redis database, our serverless Redis database. And that was so easy to get set up. You see how it took seconds. Super, super simple to go ahead and set it up. We had Pusher to go ahead and enable real-time aspects to our Redis database, which was absolutely incredible. We had NextAuth and Facebook login. And you can see there's different little parts to that where we can go ahead and tweak it. And there's going to be places where I promise you, you will slip up, but it's okay. Just take your time. And you can go ahead and follow this tutorial, join us in different communities. The Discord, the Next.js Discord community is incredible. The Papa Fam Discord community is incredible. And yeah, everyone's here to help you out, okay? And then we got TypeScript. You guys learned a bunch about TypeScript, including loads of different cool little tricks to go ahead and infer the types from return functions, which was incredible. You created 2 API Next.js endpoints. Banging. You have a post endpoint, a get endpoint. You also created your first ever server component. You learned about the head components, the new layout components, the page components, and how to create your own server components, right? So a bunch of cool stuff. You found out how to create client components inside the new app directory. And you are able to use SWR, the new data fetching hooks. Well, not new, they've been around for a while. The data fetching hooks for Vercel to essentially replace Redux. So absolutely incredible amount of stuff to happen here. Now, I do want to mention that this video would not have been possible without our amazing friends over at Upstash. This was an absolutely incredibly powerful build because of Upstash, and I want to go ahead and just reiterate that you can go ahead and make benefit of doing today's build completely free right now. There is no charge to go ahead and get set up. They have an awesome setup page to go ahead and set up your first example project, and it's very good documentation. You can go ahead and check them out. Simply head over to upstash.com. As I mentioned before, if I'm ever using a Redis database, Upstash is the guys that I'm going to. It's easy to use. It avoids all the headache of setting up my own stuff, scaling up and down, all that kind of crazy stuff. And the best part is it's free until I really start using it. And it's per request model. So you can optimize to reduce number of requests. You can do exactly what we did today with use SWR to optimize your requests. And yeah, it's got REST API access to allow you to use it on edge and the serverless functions. What more do you want, guys? Absolutely incredible, right? Next.js 13 apps can be deployed, and I did deploy this one. It was just very fidgety. So I'm going to nail it, the deployment steps, and I'm creating an entirely new video as to how you can go ahead and actually deploy any Next.js app with app directory or using NextAuth, because those, in my opinion, will be huge value drops for everyone. If you want access to the code, make sure you go ahead and work for it, or you can buy the GitHub repo access. People ask me why I do that. It's because you need to work for it. Or if you want access there, you can go and get it. But I don't want people to just copy it. I want you guys to work, because that's what makes you developers absolutely incredible. All right, without further ado, this was the app that we built today. It was an incredible app, right? We have a meta messenger with a loading state with Next.js 13, which allows us to use the new server components in a streaming fashion. You can also have the error component if there was ever error. If there's ever an error that occurred, you can determine who's the sender, who's the receiver. Doesn't matter if you have 50, 100 clients on there, it will work. We learned about pub sub as well. So much in today's video, right? And we were able to build a beautiful looking app. Powered by the Facebook login, right? So really cool stuff. On that note, I'm gonna go ahead and call this one a massive success. And that note, we just blew past 600 likes as well. That's the way I like to end this, right? That was crazy. Look at it, they couldn't time it any better, right? So at that point, guys, thank you for tuning in. This is your boy Papa React, Sunny, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. There's going to be more videos on the channel. I'm aiming for weekly drops now, so we have the team and I are working overtime to get this stuff in, digesting information, building an incredible app, pumping it out to you. So if you really are enjoying this stuff, then make sure you definitely do subscribe, and all I ask is you hit that like button and notification icon, so that way you don't miss more videos and you help push this out to more developers. Thank you for being absolutely incredible. I love this community and I love what we're doing here. And I will hopefully see you in the next video. Now, I will see you in the next video. That's how we end it out. Let me just read the chat last second. We got Marius in the house, Amy, Luke. We got Papicha, Adash, Manish, everyone who tuned in today. Thank you so much, Victoria of Lagos. All of you, absolutely incredible. Still, and we just blew over 600 likes. Thank you so much, Papa Fam. I will see you in the next video. Peace. Lewis Ryan, awesome stuff as always. Thank you for the build. Cheers, Pop Fan. Keep the code crushing. David Kiss in the house. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you, guys. Peace.